All right. You guys finally ready? All right.
Oh, gosh.
And Dan is with us, so we are all 11, and it is a valid protest, so we'll need a majority. It will be that issue on the. You'll get to that. Yes. So it's 2/3 is the vote.
So that's 8, right, Bill? 8.
8. Yeah. Okay. I think we're ready, right? So. Welcome, everybody. It is October 28th, 2024, and this body prides itself as always starting right at 5:30. But not tonight. We all had to decide what we were wearing for Halloween, and that took us a little while. It was either that or we had an executive session on city administrator evaluation, and we've been in an executive session. So we've been earning our pay despite keeping you waiting. So we apologize for that. But it is October 28th. This is a regular council meeting of the Billings City Council. If you need a copy of our agenda, it's back on that cart. But we'll jump in then. If you would, please stand with me for our Pledge of Allegiance. And our invocation will be by Councilmember Mike Boyette. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lord, today we invite you to preside over this meeting. Even if we have different opinions, give us unity of spirit. Help us to listen politely as others share their points of view. Help us to work to as a unified team in combining ideas for the greater good. Help us work as a whole rather than individuals trying to promote their own agendas. May we have the spirit of camaraderie in this room and work together on our shared mission. Thank you.
Amen. Denise, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Shaw. Here. Councilmember Gulick.
Here.
Neese.
Present.
Owen.
Here.
Joy.
Present.
Kennedy.
Here.
Aspenleiter.
Here.
Tidswell.
Here.
Boyette.
Here.
Rupsis.
Here.
Mayor Cole.
Here. We are glad to have Councilmember Tidswell with us online. Councilmember Tidswell, you know the routine. Sometimes if we don't see your little yellow hand go up, please feel free to interrupt at any time and we'll recognize you.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Our first item up on our agenda, then is our minutes. We've got minutes ready to go from September 23 and also October 14. Is there either discussion, changes, or a motion relating to one or either or both sets of minutes? Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I move we approve September 23rd, 2024 and October 14th, 2024 minutes.
Very good. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Gulick. Discussion or changes? Seeing none. They were presented as together, so the motion is to approve of both sets of minutes. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, please say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next up are council courtesies. We'll start with a special privilege that we have tonight, special honor. We have with us members of the crew of the USS Billings. And I'm going to invite the president of the Friends of the USS Billings, Ron Spence, up and to tell us what are all these fine-looking gentlemen and women with us here. Ron, tell us about it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. It's a privilege for us to be here this evening. Thank you very much for letting us be here. We have with us today 9 members of the crew of the USS Billings. There's one more member that is on a little bit later flight that'll be in later tonight. These folks come every year. We bring members of the crew out to spend some time in our city, usually here for about a week. They will come out and we do different things with them during that week. Today they spent a couple hours with the Boys and Girls Club. They were at the Rotary Luncheon. They were up at the airport visiting the Operations Center. They'll be doing different things with other schools, other civic organizations during the week. And it's really a great honor for them to be here. And they go back on the ship then and they get to tell their fellow shipmates about the namesake city. And believe me, I've been there on the ship, and I've had numerous sailors come up to me and said, yeah, I remember so-and-so telling me about going to the burger dive. And we remember about going to the Boys and Girls Club and playing with the kids for a couple hours and how great that was. So these women and men go back and they tell their fellow sailors about it. And it's good, just good for the community, good for the sailors. I get a lot of great pleasure out of watching them do these things, because to see the joy on kids' faces and people at the Rotary lunch that get to talk to them and ask them questions, it's really a great feeling. So what I'd like to do is introduce now the executive officer of the ship, Commander Frank Levine. He will tell you a few things about the ship, and then he will introduce the crew.
Very good. Commander, welcome.
Mayor, good evening. Council members, good evening. Thank you for having us here. Really appreciate being here. Tell you we're proud to bear and carry the name Billings, USS Billings. It's awesome to be here. We appreciate the opportunity with the Boys and Girls Club today. If you haven't played kickball in a while, it gets pretty competitive. I kind of lost myself in that game, but it was definitely fun. What was that? Yeah, we do have video. Without further ado, before I go into a quick more thank yous, I want to introduce the sailors on board the USS Billings. They're going to say their names, where they're from, and what they do for the ship. Starting on in.
Good evening. My name is Aisha Lawson. First name is Rochelle. I'm from Claremore, Oklahoma. I'm the doctor on the boat, one of the junior ones.
Commander, I'm going to ask you to ask them to come up to the microphone and have them do it, because this is actually televised, and the people out there in TV land, and we have viewers, millions of viewers, and they want to know the sailors' names, where they're from. So please, if you would just stand up and then come to the microphone, and then that way it'll be picked up by our television station, and everybody out there in TV land will know, and you'll be famous. And if you've got an agent, we don't pay anything. So,
Yes, sir.
sorry.
Good evening. My name is HM3 Lawson. My first name's Rochelle. I'm from Claremore, Oklahoma, and I'm one of the junior docs on the boat. So I do all the medical, TCCC, we do all the training, CPR. That's what I do.
Great. Thank you. Next.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Willie Hartness. I'm a gunner's mate on board the ship, so I work on all the guns, pretty much. So I don't shoot as much as you'd think, but I do repair them and make sure they're good to go for the ship.
Very good. And he'll be with our department, police department, checking out the shooting range here in a few days. Why don't you remain standing, because we're going to have you come up to get a picture with the council in just a minute, so that'd be great.
Good evening, Mayor and people of Montana, Billings, Montana. My name is Ian Rogers. Originally, I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, so roll tide for all you football fans. My job entails me dealing with the propulsion, so everything that makes the ship go, lights it up, that's what I do. We maintain it so that the ship is always ready to do what it needs to do.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm DCF Insiders. I'm one of 3 DC on USS Billings, and I verify that I'm a firefighter on USS Billings. So I verify all that equipment, make sure everything's ready to go when fire breaks out or anything like that. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is MN3 Ahmad Brown from Elizabeth, New Jersey originally, and I deal with basically bombs, I guess you could say, explosive ordnance disposal. And thank you for having me.
Great.
Evening, everyone. Chief Operations Specialist Cody Scott. By trade, I would do something similar to an air traffic control, but while we're in port, dealing with more admin stuff, helping sailors out with their careers.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lieutenant Junior Grade Megan Keesbay. I'm the first lieutenant on the ship. I basically work to help keep the ship look pretty and nice.
Good evening. I am Command Senior Chief Anthony Ferretti. I am from Detroit, Michigan originally. Go Lions. We're actually good this year. I am the senior enlisted leader, so I'm in charge of and work for all of the enlisted sailors on our ship. We have about 90 of them right now.
Good.
All right. That's a sample size of the crew of USS Billings. It's about 10% of us. Like the command senior said, we have about 100 sailors, 90 to 100 sailors on board the ship. My name is Commander Frank Lamine. I'm from Belgrade, Florida. Believe it or not, outside of our mission to take the ship downrange and deploy and do the nation's business, a part of our mission is partnerships and building relationships. So that's the reason we're here in Billings, Montana, to build relationships. We really appreciate what you guys are doing. Really appreciate the support you guys give us. I know there's questions out there about whether or not the ship is decommissioning, and the answer is resoundingly no. The ship is not decommissioning. And again, like I told you earlier, I know this because if they decommission, I'd be without a job in May. So if there's any questions about that, I'm happy to talk about that, but the ship is not decommissioning. Outside of that, we'd like to acknowledge the Friends of Billings and everything they've done to welcome us. I'd like to acknowledge the people of Billings and everything they've done to welcome us, and this committee and the crew. So thank you guys. I think I speak for the entire ship, including the commanding officer. We thank you. Thank you for the welcome. And just like you guys, we're Billings, Montana sailors.
Very good. Thank you, Commander. And while you guys are coming up, can we get a picture? Come on up, and while they're doing that, how about a round of applause for this crew? Come on up. The only catch is you're taller than we are, so maybe on your knees or however you want to do it, but I don't know if you can all fit in. Does that work? Photographers, you guys tell us. You're the photographers.
Perfect.
We haven't seen Brent in a long time.
Yes.
One more.
We're good. All right.
Council
thanks.
members, I do believe the crew has a gift for each of you.
Oh, thank you, guys. All right. Thank you. Did everybody get a? Yes, I did. And did you get a challenge card? There you go. Did you? Here. I did. Okay. Appreciate it, Commander. Thank you, guys. Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. The what? Oh, yes, I will. And I'm going to wrap up a few things. So the crew are going to dismiss themselves. They're going to go eat themselves silly at Burger Dive. So enjoy it. I also just want to put, again, a thank you to the Friends of the USS Billings. We've got some members of the Friends of the USS Billings, Ron Spence, the president, Dennis Pittman, Brent Brooks, the Mariskas, James and Joy Mariska. Hope I didn't miss anybody else. Thank you. The crew has genuinely, in the ship, a unique relationship with their namesake city. It's really unusual in the Navy. And the Navy really appreciates the tight relationship we've established with the ship. So we're famous in the Navy. Okay, good for something. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Good to see Brent again.
But it's different from this side.
Yeah, for some reason. For anybody who didn't understand that, Brent's our former city attorney. So Thank you, everybody. We're on council courtesies. Very importantly, for anybody who's listening, there's an opportunity to meet the crew one-on-one on Wednesday night at the library from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock. Just a public meet and greet. Please come. They'll show some pictures, answer any questions, talk with members of the public. Again, this Wednesday, 5 to 7, community room at the Billings Public Library. Please be there. We want to show them a good turnout from our community and show our appreciation for the crew. Very good. Thank you. Other council courtesies this evening? Anything from other council members?
Basketball season.
Yay. Condolences to the Yankees fans out there. Is there a game tonight? There is. Okay, so updates are in order at any appropriate time. We do have two proclamations this evening. First up, our Epilepsy Awareness Month, and we may have some representatives. Do we have representatives who would like to comment? Okay, so as soon as I'm done, if you would like to comment, you should feel free to. The proclamation reads as follows. Epilepsy Awareness Month is a nationwide effort to raise awareness about epilepsy and to improve and save lives through better care, advocacy, research, therapies, and education. Epilepsy is a brain disorder characterized by recurrent and unprovoked seizures that can affect anyone at any age and at any time. Epilepsy is the fourth most common neurological disorder, and approximately 3.4 million people in the United States, including 10,800 in Montana, live with active epilepsy. And whereas more than 324,000 Hispanic Americans and almost 600,000 Black, non-Hispanic Americans live with epilepsy in the United States, and disparities leading to worse outcomes exist for some people with epilepsy, and there can be significant delays in obtaining appropriate diagnosis for Native Americans, Asian, Native Hawaiians, and other Pacific Islanders. And whereas an increasing number of people are diagnosed with certain rare epilepsies that are complex, severe, chronic, and life-threatening, and collectively, rare epilepsies account for a growing percentage of the epilepsy population. And whereas people with epilepsy need access to affordable, comprehensive, physician-directed, and person-directed health care, and delays in accessing effective treatments increase the likelihood of seizures and related complications. And whereas even though many treatments are approved to treat seizures, 30 to 40% of people with epilepsy still live with uncontrolled seizures. And the epilepsy-related medical costs associated with uncontrolled epilepsy are 2 to 10 times higher than those of controlled epilepsy. And whereas 21% of people with epilepsy have reported not being able to afford their prescription medications in the past year, and whereas epilepsy and seizures impose an annual economic health care burden of approximately $54 billion, and whereas 470,000 children live with epilepsy in the United States, and on average, students with epilepsy aged 6 to 17 miss 11 or more days of school each year. And whereas protections exist in the Americans with Disabilities Act and related civil rights laws, but people with epilepsy still encounter discrimination in areas including employment, education, and housing. And whereas we must increase public knowledge in epilepsy, about epilepsy and seizures, including how to provide first aid and other assistance in an emergency, because 25% of the general public say that they would be nervous around a person with epilepsy. So therefore, I, William Cole, Mayor of the City of Billings, do hereby proclaim the month of November 2024 to be Epilepsy Awareness Month, and encourage Billings residents to take action together to overcome the challenges of living with epilepsy and accelerate therapies to stop seizures, find cures, and save lives. So with that, was there anybody who wanted to comment on the proclamation? No obligation, but if you did, I wanted you to have an opportunity. And if you would, just please quickly introduce yourself and tell us what you would like.
I'm Megan Hodson, and I'm the advisory board chair for the Epilepsy Foundation Montana.
I'm Vanessa Ferguson. I'm also a board member with the Montana Epilepsy Foundation, and I have epilepsy.
Very good.
My husband has epilepsy, so I'm the caregiver.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for what you do. Anything else that you would like to remind us of this evening?
We just wanted to Thank you for doing the proclamation for the city of Billings. This is the first one in the state of Montana. We are trying to get as much awareness out there as possible, because this is a very meaningful awareness for people. Being in Montana, we're very isolated from other states in the way of care for people with epilepsy. We have a slew of information that we would like to pass out to you. And we brought you a brain.
A purple brain, so you can have some.
We might need that before the night is over.
To squish the brain, yes.
Might be hard to split up.
Because I can't take up all your time telling you the amount of information we know about epilepsy and how much this means to us. We are thankful that Mayor Cole joined us on our walk to end epilepsy this last May, and we hope that next May more of you will join us at MSUB the third Saturday. It'll be in the evening this time.
Yes. Yeah, and we do offer seizure first aid training as well, and it's free. So we would love if all of you would become certified with us.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, and thank you
We appreciate it.
for everything that you're doing for our community.
Yes.
And there are a lot of brains in that bag, so very good. Thank you.
Lots of brain power.
All right, very good. We appreciate it.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. And then our next proclamation is recognition of Lung Cancer Awareness Month. I don't know if we have anybody with us, but if we do, please feel free to come to the podium now while I read the proclamation. Whereas lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer death among men and women in the United States and Montana, accounting for more deaths than colon cancer, breast cancer, and prostate cancer combined. And whereas according to the Centers for Disease Control, there were 162 new lung cancer cases between 2017 and 2021, and 109 deaths due to lung cancer between 2018 and 2022 in Montana. And whereas the 5-year survival rate for localized lung cancer is about 60%, yet only 24% of lung cancers are diagnosed at this early stage. And whereas screening for lung cancer for high-risk individuals using low-dose computed tomography can lead to earlier detection of lung cancer and save lives, reducing the mortality by 20% when compared to screening by chest x-rays in the National Lung Screening Trial, and reducing the risk of death at 10 years by 24% in men and 33% in women, as demonstrated by another large randomized trial. And whereas funding for lung cancer research trails far behind funding for research of many other cancers, and additional research is needed in early diagnosis, screening, treatment for lung cancer, as well as in lung cancer affecting women and lung cancer health disparities. And whereas lung cancer incidence is decreasing twice as fast in men as it is in women. Each year, more women die from lung cancer than breast cancer. And by 2035, based on current trends, more women will die from lung cancer than men. And whereas African Americans have the highest rate of lung cancer incidence and mortality of all races, and disparities in lung cancer screening, diagnosis, treatment, and mortality are apparent among African Americans and other racial minorities. And whereas lung cancers in individuals who never smoked is the 7th leading cause of cancer-related death and accounts for 17 to 26,000 deaths in the United States every year. And where radon is the leading cause of lung cancer among individuals who never smoked, and the 2nd leading cause of lung cancer overall. And whereas the stigma surrounding lung cancer creates barriers to early diagnosis, treatment, and funding for research, has a detrimental impact on the quality of life of people diagnosed with lung cancer, and hinders awareness and research into lung cancer risk factors other than smoking. And whereas lung cancer research is leading to breakthroughs in the identification of genetic alterations associated with lung cancer and the development of lung cancer treatments, including immunotherapies and targeted therapies. And whereas organizations such as the American Lung Cancer Society, or the American Lung Cancer Screening Initiative and Women's Lung Cancer Forum are committed to educating about lung cancer and better screening and working to increase lung cancer survival rates in Montana. Now therefore, I, William Cole, Mayor of Billings, Montana, do hereby proclaim November 2024 as Lung Cancer Awareness Month in Billings and recognize the need for research in lung cancer affecting women and other risk groups, and encourage all citizens to learn more about lung cancer and early detection through lung cancer screening. That's it for our proclamations. I didn't see anybody come forward, so we'll move on then. Once I find where I put my agenda. Council reports. Council, do we have anything from organizations to serve on behalf of the city? Any council reports? Okay. Then city administrator reports. Chris.
Do have just 4 items here for you. First, consent agenda item 1D. That is the BBWA our agreement with Billings Bench Water Association. I believe that will be taken off consent, and our city engineers here. There have been some emails throughout the day to clarify and make some tweaks to that agreement. So expect that there'll be a motion to remove that from consent. Second item does not need to be removed from consent. I just want to highlight it, which is the $90,000 state Homeland Security grant that was received by the IT department. That'll be to provide a risk assessment and a roadmap for our security systems across the city. As you may not know the number, but you're well aware, over the last 3, 4, 5 budgets, every year more and more money goes to security. Some close to $500,000, as we're all concerned about making sure we don't get hacked and our system doesn't get hacked. But the question that will be answered through this independent analysis is, are we at that sweet spot of spending enough and protecting enough, or are we spending too much or not enough in that area? So I just wanted to highlight that I think that'll be a very useful tool for us, and I thank the IT department for getting that. Third, regular agenda item 6, that is my evaluation. The title there is incorrect. My contract is not up for reconsideration this evening. Consistent with the memo, it should have said something to the effect that the city administrator's annual performance evaluation compensation consideration is what is being considered there. And then last but not least, we did receive one ex parte communication after the 3 o'clock deadline. That's from Elizabeth Shoemaker, Home Builders Association of Billings, and that document's there, and I think we've got some folks in attendance related to that. So those are the 4 items I wanted to highlight for you this evening, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Chris. So there is a request then that we separate item 1E, the BBWA agreement, just to describe those changes. Is that correct?
Yes, and I had it marked as D. Not sure if I heard you correctly or incorrectly. I thought I heard you say 1E, and it, I believe, is 1D as in dog.
1D. They're both involved BBWA, but it's the D one. The D as in dog.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay, I will separate that, Council, so you can consider that separated. Okay, then we'll move on to public comment on things that we will not have a public hearing on later. So tonight, that's everything on our agenda with one exception, and that's item number 2, which is the land use annexation zoning, Thomas Romine property on 58th Street and Rimrock Road. There'll be an opportunity for public comment and a public hearing on that when we get to that item. But if you came to comment on anything else on our agenda, now's the time to do it, including item number 5, which was the subdivision regulations. This is second reading on those. This had come up, Councilman Meese, I just wanted you had asked about that. We want to highlight this is your opportunity to comment on the subdivision regulations, item number 5. So we'll have public comment on all of those items. Councilmember Meese, before we begin that, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just so the public is aware, we could try, would it be appropriate to make a motion now to move item 5 to the first item on the regular agenda, so those people who are speaking on item number 5, then that item can be heard right after, as the first business session, after the consent agenda.
You could make a motion to adjust the agenda. That's always in order. So you would move it to be in front of item 2.
In front of item 2, yes.
And the purpose, can you just?
Again, the purpose was to make sure the people are here to speak on that during the public comment. We hear that item in close relation to the public testimony.
Okay.
So that's a motion I would make to move item 5 up to the first item on the business agenda.
And item 5 to move it up to item number 1. Okay, is what you're saying.
Just prior to number 2 on the
Or prior to number 2.
regular agenda.
Yeah.
If there's no second, then we'll move on.
Okay, is there a second? Not seeing a second, so I think that dies for lack of a second, but we will get to that item for sure. But very importantly, if you do want to comment on item number 5, now is the time to do it. So please come forward.
Have some. Thank you, Chris. They are two different things, thank you. And I think that there's 3 different things in there that I'm looking at. Possibly. Or do you have a look?
Got all 3?
So is Denise. Yeah, one blue one. Thank you.
Sorry to bog you down with so much data.
There you go. All right, go ahead, Kim.
Thank you, Mayor Cole and distinguished council members. My name is Kimberly Welzenbach. I'm the CEO for the Home Builders Association here in Billings. We represent all of South Central and Eastern Montana in housing, and we're based here in Billings. So the highest concentration of our member base is here in Billings. With that said, I'd like to thank you for the time you're providing me today to speak to you regarding some concerns we have facing our industry pertaining specifically to the streetlight subdivision mandate. I want to open with, like everyone, the HBA, our members, we understand that safety within our community is nothing to be taken lightly. We support taking responsible measures to protect our residents, our property, from elements and individuals that seek to cause harm. The key word here is responsible. Unfortunately, we're not convinced that the mandate for streetlights in every subdivision may be a reasonable approach. We may be taking kind of a shotgun to an anthill approach, I think, on this. Though the Chamber of Commerce, who backed this initiative, is knowledgeable and respected community partner, their expertise is based in the betterment of our business community, and our local business building industry feels that they may not really fully comprehend the impacts because it's really not their expertise, their level of expertise. In an area where, specifically right now, where we struggle to address issues with regard to affordable housing. I've presented you with a letter signed by numerous housing professionals and builders, including the HBA of Billings, the Billings Association of Realtors, along with data from other housing professionals and experts. Our concerns are many, but at this time time only allows me to address just a few here today. So I encourage you to take some time to review the information, and please reach out with any questions after today. Our first point of concern is that no local studies have been conducted to support the need for the streetlight mandate in Billings. The HBA, as I'm sure other community partners, would welcome the opportunity to help facilitate such a study. The study used to support the mandate was conducted in markets very dissimilar to Billings, such as New York City. One of the things that makes Montana so appealing to live, especially for single-family homeowners, is the ability to feel separated from the congestion and the bright lights of the big cities. We're fortunate to live in a city where we can sit outside at night in the privacy of our own home and view the stars, the beautiful big sky that Montana is so famous for. For those who want Montana lifestyle but prefer to live in close-knit, well-lit communities, that is also an option. This mandate effectively takes away the homeowner's right to choose how they want to live. The determination as to whether or not a community needs as much lighting as is being mandated to be considered safe should be the decision of those involved with the construction and maintenance of that community and that subdivision. These are the builders, the developers, the homeowners, and the HOAs. In an era where so many are concerned with affordable housing, we feel this rule places unnecessary costs where additional safety measures may not be needed. The amount of lighting currently required in this rule will certainly not be necessary for all subdivisions. Additionally, the linear feet of lot size presented by the city of 75 feet falls well below the average single-family lot size. This provides a false sense of cost. It's similar to saying your taxes will only go up by this much based on a $100,000 valued home. Regardless of which of the three options for streetlights the builders or developers choose, this rule will add a minimum of $9,000 to the term of a typical home loan, just to power the poles, provided the utility company doesn't increase the power.
And Karen, I'm just going to ask you to wrap up if you can.
Okay, all right. Northwest Energy stands to be the primary beneficiary in this rule, as well as reap 100% of the revenue in perpetuity with no investment on their part. Though Northwest Energy is not charged with city safety, neither are the homeowners or the developers. This is a proposed city regulation that would put the onus on others, namely builders, developers, and the homeowners. I'd call your attention to the data that I've provided to you tonight. The $3,750 minimum per pole plus the $9,000 minimum that we're looking at is a lot to ask, especially now when we're talking about in fees. The average home, single-family home, incurs approximately 25% of the cost of the home is in regulatory fees. Multifamily is in excess of 40%. That adds approximately $93,870 on a $390,000 home. So the median right now for new construction is $4,000 here in Billings. Now that study is from 2021. I'm certain it's gone up, and from what I hear, it is actually closer to 40% in the regulatory fees. So in conclusion, it's important that we stress for those who may not be aware that all the costs imposed on builders and developers do transfer to the homeowner. They can't absorb those costs. It has to go to the homeowner. So I implore you to please reconsider your ruling to implement a streetlight mandate for the reasons I've presented here today, both written and oral. I and others in our industry are happy to visit with you further to work on a solution that keeps our city safe and affordable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Dan Brooks with the Billings Chamber of Commerce at 815 South 27th Street. Our top two priorities from membership is public safety and housing supply and housing affordability. Obviously, there's got to be some kind of balance here. I think part of the discussion has come down to we have to be either or. And I think in your last two meetings, kind of the consensus from council is that no, we have to do both. And we would agree with that. We have to both build safety into our city and reduce the cost of housing. So as has been suggested before about having a process to look through the regulations, requirements, the permitting process, the inspection process, we would offer our resources, our help, our time to be a part of that solution, to see where we can make up those efficiencies and I would argue more than offset the cost of this new lighting, so that therefore we can do both. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I do have another handout for you. It's not stapled, because, but if you want to just,
So just,
it's just one per, I tried to organize
several
it.
pages to one.
It's graphs, so hopefully it's more user-friendly for you to glance at. Actually, I need one of those too. Sorry, I forgot to take one for myself. Reference material here. Thank you. So my name's Elizabeth Shoemaker. I work with the Home Builders Association at 1645 Avenue D. I'm also a realtor, real estate broker, White Lotus Realty. And so I have some data for you that shows how many new homes were built through the course of since 2020, and the average price of those homes to hopefully illustrate to you that there's just not a lot of, it's going down, the production is going down, and the prices are going up. So in 2020, homes, there was 297 homes. So you can see the average is about 350 to 400,000. And the next page, 2021, it goes down 212 homes, and the price goes up to an average of anywhere between 350 and 400,000. Or actually, it goes up to 450 at one time. And then January 2023, year built homes, it goes down again to 161 homes, and the average price is now going up to almost $500,000 here, pretty much on every month. And then the next year, which is this year, to 2024, we have only 121 homes being sold on the MLS that are new construction, and the average price of that home is pretty close to around $500,000. So that, I think, clearly illustrates to you that builders are wanting to move outside of the city and to build. I have several notes from different builders in our community who have the same sentiments. I would like to read a few of them. Hopefully I have time to read a few of them. They are included in that letter, so I hope you will take the time to read them yourself if I don't get to them. One from Sean Nelson with Sean Nelson Construction. I'm 57 and I have built approximately 130 homes over the 23 years in and out around Billings. That said, I have not built in the city for over 3 years. The lighting issue is yet another reason for me to pass on city projects and use my time and experience elsewhere. When these things happen, the building community will pass it on to the eventual homeowner every time and leave for greener pastures. On another note, I decided to give the city a try. After all this time, I have waited almost 6 weeks for a simple office realignment near Home Depot. This is a person I have built homes for and other work, or I wouldn't even have considered it. 5 years ago, I would have walked up to the counter and left with a permit in hand. Now it's ridiculous. Plenty of others just build without a permit, and I'm sure you can see why. Commerce should take place without so many annoyances, whether it's extra costs directly targeting the builders like this lighting issue or slow permitting or whatever. There are other problems that I haven't addressed. And also I want to say that Billings Association of Realtors also supports this letter. Amber Parrish, the executive officer, wrote, "The Billings Association of Realtors opposes City of Billings regulation requiring all new developments and homes to install street lighting. This added cost of development will be passed on to the consumer, further pushing out the reach of ability to some to achieve homeownership in an already tough real estate climate. Therefore, I would ask that you reconsider that lighting mandate, just because it doesn't sound like a lot, but it really is. And every time it increases the price of the home, that gets passed on to the buyer, and then the gap becomes more and more for those that want to buy a home, especially first-time home buyers." Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Mayor and members of council, thank you for your time. My name is Mike Vinton.
I'm here, I'm a local builder and developer. I'm also a past president of the Billings Home Builders Association, currently the first vice president of the Montana Building Industry Association, and I'm a current legislative candidate for the House, the State House. And I say this because we are working on all levels to try to reduce the price of housing. We have a housing crisis around our country and locally. We need more housing, bottom line. This regulation is exactly what we're trying to fight against. It's an unnecessary, unneeded regulation that adds to the cost of housing, making it unattainable, especially for first-time home buyers. And I'll reiterate this, 25 to 40% of cost of housing is regulation related, directly or indirectly. This proposed regulation is going to be for new development, and this group pushing it is saying it's for safety, but they would admit it doesn't do anything for existing housing, for existing subdivisions. If there's a safety issue, that should be brought forward by the citizens of those areas, and we can address that. But new development should be left to the developer and the citizens that want to buy that housing. And I want to say that there are many dark skies community across the nation. That's not an uncommon thing, where there are no yard lights, no street lights. People like to live that way, and that should be their choice. It shouldn't be regulated upon them. So this proposed regulation, I believe, is fixing a problem that doesn't exist. I mean, there could be problems within different communities that could be addressed separately, but one size doesn't fit all. We can't continue to impose unnecessary costs and regulations on housing and expect the cost of housing to come down. I ask you to reconsider and vote no on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Bo Thompson, and I'm also a local home builder. I've been building for the past 15 years, and also I'm a former president of the Home Builders Association. I live in the Heights. I live on Stewart Court South. I've lived there for about 6 years, and there are already streetlights there. They are spread out farther than what this mandate says, and I guess they're paid through my taxes already. And this is calling to set up another special district that charges the homeowners for the maintenance and the cost and the electricity for the streetlights. I guess I don't understand how that works. There definitely needs to be a balance between safety and the cost of building. I built a lot of middle income type housing. Just 3 years ago, I could build a house for $350,000, very nice house for folks. Now it's another $100,000 to $200,000 more to build that same exact house. And so we just keep adding costs onto these things. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Doug Wild. We've had a chance to hang out and visit with you guys in the past. And I'll keep it brief because I think the point may have got across that many of us oppose the lighting. But I just want to point out that, I mean, I love building in the city of Billings. I know there are many of my peers that have decided to not build in the city of Billings for whatever their reasons were, and probably justified. I love our city. I think it's important to not increase cost unnecessarily and to overburden. If people want street lighting, then they'll pay for it. If they don't want it, it's not, I don't feel it's the city's responsibility to require them to pay for something they don't want. If it really is a safety concern, the market will weed that out. People will go to a neighborhood and go, that has streetlights, I want to live there. And they're willing to pay for that. I don't believe that most people are going to want to pay for that. I think most people are going to want to, save the money and enjoy some stars. Maybe see the northern lights when it happens to pop up again. But I don't think that this requirement in the subdivision regulations to require streetlights is something that is, beneficial at this time or any time. I think it makes things expensive in perpetuity. I think it's just something that the city doesn't need to require of new developments. That's all I got. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yes.
Long time no see.
I'm back, yes. Pam Puritan, 3606 Quemet Circle. So, Mayor and Council, thank you for having me. It's good to see all of you again. And my biggest issue with this is basically policy. You've heard from builders, developers, you've heard from the HBA, and I hope you listen to what they're saying. We have been so concerned about the cost of home building going up, but yet here's another regulation that's going to cost money for the home builders, which goes to the homeowners, the new homeowners. So just this morning, I read a report from Eugene Graff, who is the former president of Southwest Montana Building Industry Association, and he stated that 40% of the increased housing costs is due directly to government regulations, primarily local regulations. So that's one area that I just think about that. And then the safety thing. I mean, I'm not going to reiterate what Doug and Kim and some of the others said. I think there's a choice there. I do believe there's a choice. I know some of you have mentioned it before. I live in a neighborhood for almost 40 years. It doesn't have streetlights. There are people that were going to move out there, and they're walkers. So they said, I want a place where there's streetlights. They went to Ironwood. That's great. But those of us that are out there, we love the dark sky. And so anyway, so that's another thing. The other thing is that I'm a firm advocate for private property rights. And I think this is just one tiny aspect of it. The mayor, I think 2 weeks ago, you brought up some of the numbers. The numbers aren't there. They're still not there. The other point to be made is that the chamber has advocated for SEPTED. We started using SEPTED in some of the city buildings or projects. Well, I'm sorry. And that's what we fought against when I was on council. Do not put SEPTED principles in regulations, in the city regulations. So that's another aspect of, this is a policy that the chamber is trying to insert within the city. And I'm sorry, that's not who we should be. One of the things that Kim said she didn't mention, and I thought this is a good one, is that Billings has realized a significant decline in permitting to single-family units. Permits have declined annually from 365 in 2021 to 196 in 2024. That's a 53% decrease. So I'm not saying that we just let the builders go and do whatever they want to do. They know their regulations. Some of the council members have said, well, we want to look at other fees, permitting, and some of that. We've been talking about that for years, but it hasn't been done. So I don't know that it's going to be done now. But one thing that we can do is not add another regulation. So I'm hoping on the second reading that you will vote no for that and look at other ways to attack the safety issue. Thank you. And it's good to see all of you, even you guys.
Very good, thank you. Any other comments on any item on our consent agenda or anything on our agenda tonight other than item number 2? Any other discussion? Before we close, okay, no one's coming forward, so we'll close the public comment period. Council, separations from our consent agenda, we will separate item 1D, the MOA with the Billings Beach Water Association. Councilmember Aspenweider?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I need to separate agenda item 1J2 for purposes of recusal.
1J2. Other separations? Councilmember Kennedy?
I would. Mayor, I'd like to separate 1E.
1E, the amendment number 5 with contract HDR involving the West End Reservoir design and BBWA and loader.
Thank you.
Any other separations? Okay, is there a motion relating to the items that have not been separated? Councilmember Nice?
I move to approve the items of the consent agenda as submitted, with the exception of the items moved for separation, which is D, E, and J2.
Very good. Second by Councilmember Kulik. Any discussion? Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. 1F, I think it's interesting, and we should say that the Billings Police Department has been offered a sub-grant for domestic violence training and continuation of domestic violence investigator for a total of $69,000. I think that's important that we recognize that.
Very good. Any other discussion? Before we proceed to vote? Okay, the motion is for approval of the non-separated items. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. First separated item, then will be item 1D. Chris, did staff want to explain those changes?
Guess I can, yeah, we can start off. I'll have Mac, our city engineer, kind of highlight some of the tweaks there that we recommend.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, basically there's two, I'm going to call them minor changes in order to make this agreement better in terms of the city. The first one was on page 5, page 4 under the payment. And that was just to clarify the engineering fees, that when they send a bill, it's actually for work that's been done under that, not a comparison to how much of the project's done. It's actually, hey, the engineer spent $10, they submitted an invoice for $10. The second piece was with remedies. So obviously the city here is trying to protect itself. So we added some language. Let's say for some reason BBWA didn't do something according to the rules. We added a statement that said, you know, if a fine came up or something in that manner, that they would be responsible for that, not the city. So those are the two main changes, and we sent that in the email so that you had that language.
Very good. Councilmember Askew?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And Mac, I appreciate you addressing those comments. Those were questions and concerns that I raised in review of that MOA, just to make sure that we were crystal clear about failure of follow-through and any kind of fines or recapture of funding, along with interest or fees associated with that, in the failure of BBWA to follow through on their end. So I'm perfectly happy with the way the changes were, but I appreciate the department for fixing that quickly.
Councilmember Absalom, are you prepared to make a motion on that item?
I'd prefer not to.
Okay. Is there a motion on that item? Councilmember Boyette?
Thank you, Mayor. Because is this consent agenda item number D? It'll be removed to a time specified by the.
Deputy Mayor, Mayor and Council, I think the intent is still to approve it tonight, unless you direct otherwise. We just made a couple of modifications to clarify language that was already there.
That we approve item number D with the modifications as stated.
Very good. Motion is to approve item 1D. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Kulik. Now any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a motion to a vote. If in favor of the motion to approve item 1D, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion passes with exception of Councilmember Asperleiter. Next item up, 1E, Councilmember Kennedy, that was your separation. Would you like to kick us off?
Yes, I just had a couple questions on this. Chris or Mac, on this, it said with your change order, you're reducing the current Amendment 4 by a scope of $1.6 million. You're doing some other things. Are we, with these changes, and this is a change of $2.1 million, is that affecting the timeline and everything and getting the project done?
So yes, Councilmember Kennedy, so a question, is it affecting the timeline? No, this is kind of some bookkeeping to sort of clean up some scope of work that we had previously with the pipeline and the river intake, but it covers the new scope of work on the canal as well as our pumping station, and that gets us all the way through construction of the pumping station. Basically, as I put it, to where we would have, water live to the city.
Okay, just one other follow-up. You eliminated the construction administration services. How are you handling that piece?
We eliminated construction services for the river intake. This does include construction services for the pump station, the intake, and the pipeline. So it's actually in here for that scope of work.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Mac, just so we understand the big picture, right, understand from reading the staff report is by only taking ditch water, we're saving about 18 million bucks over the pipeline. But staff has said, long-term, we need a pipeline. The ditch only runs certain months of the year, and that's going to be an issue. To what extent are we going to be making capital changes necessary for the ditch operation that will, quote, go to waste at a later point when we have to put in a pipeline, or that it can be reused? Or is that really not an issue? Just look, if you gaze into that crystal ball out several decades or whatever the timing might be, and comment on the big picture.
Yeah, I think we're being very careful on chipping away through those expenses that we might spend on the canal right now, but I don't think it's, wasted money, if you will, based on efficiencies. So I don't think that's the case at this point.
Okay, just wanted to highlight the issue. Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Mayor. Mac, if we do in the future build a separate pipeline to the reservoir, we'll still have the canal as a backup if we ever needed that, I would assume. Is that correct?
Yeah, that would still be a source.
Okay,
absolutely.
So the funds would still be usable sometime in the future. And do we have to pay the ditch company for their water usage or their water intake?
Yes, so we have an annual, and if you recall, back in 2023, we had the agreement with the canal as kind of utilizing the canal as the carriageway, if you will, the delivery source, and there's an annual fee of, I believe, $150,000 for that, but that's for the full delivery of flow, so it's not like we're on a meter there.
Right, so as much as we need is that, so it's, as far as adding to the water cost, it's pretty minimal compared to having our own pipeline in there.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Is there a motion on this item, Councilmember Shaw?
I'd like to move to approve item 1E.
Second by Councilmember Asselmeyer. Any further discussion? Seeing none, if in favor of the motion, which is for approval, item 1E, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. If opposed, please say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next item up, item 1J2. Is there a motion? Councilmember Boyette?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we approve item 1J2.
And second by Councilmember Shaw. Any discussion? Proceed to a vote. If in favor of the motion, approval 1J2, please say aye. 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 If opposed, nay. Motion is unanimous with Councilmember Absent-Leiter recusing himself. That concludes then item number 2, brings us to our regular agenda. Items 2A and B, we will have a joint public hearing on. So, Denise, would you read both item 2A and item 2B?
This is on the Thomas Romine property at 58th Street West and Rimrock Road. It's a joint public hearing for annexation 2404 and zone change 1057. Resolution approving annexation 2404, a portion of lot 27A of the Sunny Cove Fruit Farm subdivision. Staff recommends conditional approval. And for 2B, it's the first reading ordinance for zone change 1057, again, a portion of lots 6A1 and 27A of the Sunny Cove Fruit Farms subdivision, generally located at 58th Street West and Rimrock Road. Zoning Commission recommends approval and adoption of the 10 review criteria.
Very good. Thank you. Our presenter tonight is Hunter. So, Hunter, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mayor. So tonight we have annexation 2404 and zone change 1057. These items are going over a portion of lots 6A1 and 27A of the Sunny Cove Fruit Farm subdivision. So the interconnectedness of the items tonight is we are going to be going over the annexation and the zone change. We are going to have a joint public hearing for both of these items, but they will require separate actions. Also on the table tonight is the development agreement and the ward boundary ordinance. This will be going into Ward 4. So, up on the screen right now is the area in question. What is happening tonight is that being annexed is a portion of Lot 27A of the amended plat of the Sunny Cove Fruit Farm subdivision. This annexation is about 9.31 acres, more or less. Included in this annexation of this lot in question, we are also going to be annexing a portion of Merritt Street in order to provide connections to the lot, as well as the portion of this project that is already within city limits. So here's the current limits of annexation. As you can see, lot 27A is within our zone 1 of our limits of annexation map. So it is able to be annexed in. And then the portion of Merritt Street is within our red zone, zone 3, which is our county developed area, which also marks it as being available for annexation into the city. So here is the current zoning map of the annexation and zone change tonight. So what is happening here is, so while only lot 27A is the portion, and the portion of Merritt Street is being annexed into the city, the portion of lot 6A-1 is already within the city limits. And so the zone change is going to affect both of those portions of each of those lots. Currently, this zoning is surrounded by rural residential 3 to the south and southeast. There is some corridor mixed use, some commercial area at the near street corner. Across the street, we have some N4 and N3 suburban and large lot suburban neighborhood zoning. Immediately adjacent to it is some N4 zoning along Merritt Street. And then to the east after that is Sweetgrass Creek subdivision, which has a variety of zoning through the planned neighborhood development process. And it's having N1, N2, N3, NX1, and P1 for parks. And then here's a vicinity map, satellite map showing the immediate vicinity of the area, kind of reiterating the kind of overlapping of the area being annexed and the area being rezoned. We thought we fixed this. Sorry. So, if you can turn your head a little sideways, this is an image of the subject property from Rimrock facing south. This is looking eastward toward 58th from that same position along Rimrock. This is facing southwest from that same position along Rimrock. And then this is from the subject property looking north. Well, this works. So, and then this is an image from the closest available photo we had on hand from along Marriage Street looking at the property, so facing west. So, the annexation policy criteria, we judge the annexation based off of these these 7 criteria, and we feel it has sufficiently met those criteria. 1, it is within the city of limits annexation map. 2, the city must be able to provide adequate city services at a cost acceptable to the city within the time period mutually agreed by the property owners requesting the annexation. These will be handled through the annexation agreement. Number 3, any existing or proposed public improvements within the area to be annexed will need to meet city standards. This is likewise covered in the annexation agreement. Number 4, all property owners within the area to be annexed must sign a waiver of right to protest the creation of special improvement districts. And once more, this is included in the annexation agreement. Number 5, all residential property owners within the area to be annexed will either need to create or join an existing park maintenance district. As of right now, no additional parkland is required for this piece of property. They are not doing a subdivision at this time, and it is not including any parkland in their rezoning efforts. Number 6, residential densities planned for development within the area to be annexed must meet an overall average minimum density of primary dwelling units per acre as per the current City of Billings growth policy or similar documents. The zoning that this zone change will go through as part of this annexation is going to go to our N2 mid-century neighborhood residential. And we feel that for the amount of area they are going to be within city limits, that this would provide a decent size of acceptable density. So, talking more briefly on zone change 1057. So we feel that the N2 zoning that they are proposing, it does meet the standards of our growth policy for what we want to see. The N2 zoning is compatible with the adjacent zoning standards because they are surrounded by likewise kind of smaller scale zoning for residential, and Sweetgrass Creek nearby has N2 zoning as well. And the site regulations and building restrictions of the N2 zoning do take into consideration for the public health, safety, welfare, light and air, fire, and any other dangers. And then any compliance that may become an issue as part of building those would be addressed through our site improvement processes, either through building permits, master site plan, or subdivisions as they happen. To briefly compare the 2 types of zoning that are currently on the property to what they are proposing, the area that is in the county still, it is currently burdened with RR3 zoning. This is a primarily single-family dwelling zoning, has a minimum lot width of 120 feet per lot. Building height can go up to 34 feet with a maximum building coverage of 25%. And then the setbacks are 25 feet from the rear and front property lines and 10 feet from the sides. The portion of this rezoning property that is within the city limits is currently zoned N3 zoning. So this currently allows for single-family dwellings, and per recent legislative session and state law, it does allow for duplexes as well currently. The minimum lot width for this type of zone is 65 feet per lot, and it also has a maximum building height of 34 feet. In this zone, the maximum building coverage is 40%, and then it has very traditional setbacks of 20 feet in the front and then 5 feet from the rear and sides of the property line. The desired zoning designation as part of this application is N2. N2 allows for single-family uses as well as duplexes by right. The minimum lot width for the N2 zoning is only 50 feet per principal building. The maximum building height being only 27 feet and only up to 2 stories. The maximum building coverage there is also 40%. And then for the N2 zoning, instead of a traditional setback, we have a build-to zone, meeting a majority, at least 60% of the front building facade needs to be at least 10 feet away from the front property line, but no more than 32 feet from the front property line. And then for the rear and side setbacks, those are a regular minimum of 5 feet from the property line. And then, as I stated before, the N2 zoning allows for single-family dwellings, duplexes, accessory dwelling units. While we have not gotten a specific proposal from the developer yet as to what they want to do with this land once it is fully rezoned and annexation, they have mentioned that they are intending for residential development, but we do not have any definitive designs submitted to us yet. And then up here is the 10 review criteria we look at for the zone change. Now, all of that being said, our recommendations tonight to hold a public hearing on both of these items and make a decision on them separately. Staff is recommending approval of the annexation, conditional on subject to an annexation agreement. And the zoning commission is recommending approval of the zone change and adopting the findings of the 10 criteria. One more thing before we conclude is that as of last Friday, we did receive a valid protest petition from at least 25% of the surrounding property owners within 150 feet of the area proposed to be zone changed. What this means for all of you is that in order to approve this zone change, it will require a 2/3 majority vote. Otherwise, it will not pass if it is anything less than that. And then here is the zoning map, kind of showing the overlap of the items tonight. Any questions?
Questions for Hunter? Councilmember Boyette, and then Councilmember Rupsis.
Thank you, Mayor. There's a similar property directly south on Grand Avenue, and one of the builders, Doug Wild, was here, and he's building, and all of his streets come off onto Grand. Why can't all the streets come off onto Rimrock rather than go onto Mare Lane?
Part of our requirements generally state that for developments like that, we at least like to see 2 access points as they come in. To my knowledge, the engineering department is preferring that there be 1 access off of Marriage Street in order to limit the amount of accesses that are already on Rimrock Road in this immediate vicinity. As if you can kind of briefly see, let me see here. It's a little hard to show from this example, but as you can notice, along the north side of Rimrock Road, there already is several subdivision entrances within this immediate vicinity. And generally, it's just preferred to have less on Rimrock at this immediate time in order to help mitigate traffic flows.
Go ahead.
So it's still possible to put two exits out on Rimrock, though, correct?
It is possible. I may have to defer to Public Works on some of the finer rationale of why we want less on Rimrock Road at this immediate time.
Okay, and just one follow-up then?
Sure.
The protest, was it protesting of the rezoning and the annexation, or was it the annexation of Merritt Lane?
The annexation is not subject to the protest petition. That only applies to the zone change.
Very good. Councilor Rupsis and Councilor Rassmiller.
Thank you, Mayor. Hunter, I wanted to ask about Merritt Lane, that annexation and 58th, because we haven't seen, at least in my time on council, we haven't seen this just annexation of this road that's not connected to another property that's being annexed at the time. Who owns that road? Who's petitioning for it to be annexed? What right do we have to just annex that road?
That is a public road. It is currently a county road. At the recommendation of Public Works, while we were reviewing this, We included that as part of this annexation in order to kind of better handle the possible traffic flows coming out of any development that happens here.
What right what right do we have to do that? I assume that's written somewhere in Montana code. The only thing I could find said we can do that if it's adjacent to the property, which of course this isn't this time, but does somebody know? It's not adjacent.
No, Councilmember Rupsis, Mayor and Council, just first a clarification, County Public Works actually is who wants to see it annexed. As you can see, the city already has 58th annexed to the south. And then we have there's portions of Rimrock annexed. So it's completely at the, the purview regarding the county and the city, in this case, to annex, to bring the roads into the city at this time.
Okay, so the county requested that the city
Mayor
annexes,
specifically, we had that conversation with them.
because they want us to pay to develop it, or?
Well, I think there's a variety of reasons. Partly, this area is coming into the city and we're ending up with the city roads in the city. And so we're trying to be as consistent as we can with who's doing what. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilor Rasmussen.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I've got a kind of a series of questions along that line for Mac, if I could.
Sure. Mac.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mac, this one kind of baffles me too, honestly, and I do this kind of work. I understand not wanting to try to pair a bunch more approaches on Rimrock with the speeds of Rimrock and the incessant traffic there. I get all that, and Rimrock is an MDT road at the end of the day. What I'm having a hard time understanding is it looks like we're just defaulting then for connectivity reasons and then also for a second point of ingress egress to then dumping all that on Merritt. However, it looks to me like there is another option on the same property under the same ownership to the west, which is an undeveloped dedicated right-of-way. And I can't remember if that's 60th, I believe. So was that ever considered as the second point of ingress egress into that development? And if it wasn't, why was that not looked at as the second point of ingress egress to avoid this kind of complication with Merritt? Can you speak to that for me?
Yes. So couple questions. So it's my understanding, so I believe that there's an existing subdivision improvements agreement for the parcel on the north. That also refers to an access on 60th Street. Now, we had to deal with what we were given. They're only, looking at the east side of this. So yes, that could be considered for something like that. Yes.
Okay, so I get that. I guess that's the end of my question. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mac. While we've got you, can you address kind of the mechanics of the development of Merritt if they go through the subdivision process and another access or two is determined to go on to Rimrock and there's less need to come off on Merritt or to go to the south and there's less need for Merritt, but we have annexed Merritt. What will then happen? It will be a city-owned property. Are we going to have to pay to develop Merritt? Where now, I assume the assumption is the developer will pay to develop Merritt, as opposed to the homeowners. They're going to get a freebie, which I assume would mount to, you give me a number, $30,000, $50,000 each, maybe?
Yes.
So, but if we go ahead and annex and we don't have to then use Merritt, we're going to assess the landowners to develop Merritt? Or I know you don't have a crystal ball, but can you help us understand that process?
Yeah, so I mean, the premise of Merritt being annexed, again, everything needs a catalyst. County said, hey, city, you need to annex this. Obviously, it's a gravel street So the one thing in the annexation agreement, which we'll get to, is we did say that would need to be paved. It has existing curb and gutter, so that would be paved as a freebie, if you will. The second thing is, in order to loop the water main, the annexation agreement also requires the water to be taken from 58th Street west through that street. So that was some of the logic there.
So that'll have to get dug up anyway for the water line, so there are efficiencies to go ahead and pave it. And is it just an issue of paving and putting in sidewalks? Is the sub-base built to city standards, so it's just a matter of paving and sidewalks and curb, or somebody got to rebuild the underbase of the whole road?
I think that question, I mean, under the paving premise, we would have to look at that with a design submittal.
Okay, and it'll be on the developer?
Yes.
Okay.
As the annexation agreement is written.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Mayor. This question is probably for Hunter, I would imagine. So I just wanted to follow up on what you said, because I think you said during the process, then Merritt Street was added later on. And in some of the emails we saw, that some of the people were surprised that suddenly it came there. So was there a requirement to separately post an annexation for Merritt Street and provide the proper notices, and was all of that followed correctly to make sure that, as far as what we're being here in an email, that all the regulations were followed to add Merritt Street into this annexation?
Yes, all the proper postings and legal ads were posted to,
All the public meetings, all the
Yeah.
time, okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Hunter.
We'll have an opportunity to hear from the public. There will be a public hearing, and you can address that issue. But your understanding, Hunter, is the Merritt portion of the annex was properly noticed? Is that?
yes.
Okay. Okay. Councilmember Ripsis and Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. Hunter, could you give some more detail on that? Could you tell us when that portion of Merritt Street, when the county gave us the request to annex Merritt Street, when notices went out, that kind of thing? What meetings had to be held or were held? Because it sounded to me like it wasn't known at the time that the notices went out for just the residential portion of it, and the street was handled differently.
If you'll give me one moment, please.
So maybe I can help clarify a little bit of what's going on in the confusion here. So we had a rezoning process and hearing and a public meeting with the zoning commission, which is what a lot of the participants tonight attended. The annexation's first public hearing is right now tonight. As a condition of the annexation, Merritt is also being requested by the county for annexation. So it's part of the annexation agreement and separate. And it's something that during the zoning commission meeting, we were not completely aware of at the time, because that process of the annexation agreement was still being navigated with the county. So hopefully that can help clear that up. So this meeting was notified correctly, and we followed all procedures for that notification. And the zoning itself was also notified correctly. The annexation agreement is subject to city council approval, and we did not have that vetted out until we got to notifications of this, and that's how that was notified. Hopefully that clears things up.
Okay, so obviously zoning is not annexation, but on the annexation of Merritt, which would require some sort of advance notice to the neighborhood, that was accomplished for this meeting.
Correct.
Okay. Councilmember Ripsis, this was your question. Did you want to follow up?
Yeah, and so in general, on an annexation, if we were doing an annexation only, what notice is it the same notices required for a zoning change, or different notice and hearings?
It's different notice and hearings. This was still advertised in the same proper notice, so we did advertise it in the Yellowstone County newspaper public hearing notice. We also advertised the zoning the same way, but we also go through a different process of like sending out a notification letter and also holding a zoning commission letter, and then this hearing again. So that one's been heard before in front of the zoning commission. This has been noticed in a slightly different way, but met all the notice requirements.
Okay, so for zoning changes, we have to send out the postcards and the letters and have a zoning commission hearing, and a pre-application hearing, all that kind of stuff. But for annexations, all we have to do is notice it in the paper and then put it on our budget or on our agenda.
Do we send postcards for annexation? No, not for annexation. Yeah, so,
Not for
yeah,
annexations only. Thank you.
thanks.
Okay, very good. I'd recognize Councilmember Boyette, I think, Councilmember Kennedy.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Neese, did you have some?
It was just the same thing, but I think I
Okay,
got it clear.
thank you. Councilmember Boyette?
I don't know who to address it to, but I go to both the West End Task Force meeting and the Rimrock Task Force meeting, and they're truly concerned about the density and the population, and especially the traffic. So I read in the staff report, quote, "The police department continued annexation and development will affect the ability to deliver service without adequate resources. Fire department, as this and additional annexations are built out, additional fire resources will be needed to meet and maintain our high level of services." Do these two properties do anything to help the police or fire as far as taxes? You may not know that one.
I do not know. Generally, those are the extent of the comments we receive in that aspect from the police department at least. But I couldn't speak any more on taxes or anything like that.
Councilmember Boyette, the city administrator would like to comment, so go ahead.
So Deputy Mayor Boyette, Mayor and Council, so I'll speak at an administrative level, not a detailed one. The easier one of those two is fire. Why? We're a regional fire department. Yes, it's the City of Billings Fire Department covering 42 square miles inside the city limits and an additional 45 square miles outside the city limits, of which this is inside that zone. So if it's not annexed into the city, it stays out in the county, but we still will respond to, we are the responder to fire emergencies to it in that regard. On the law enforcement side, yes, it would switch from sheriff as the primary responder to the city as the primary responder, but we have a very close mutual help on issues. So really, generally speaking, the policy question is, will there be enough tax base generated out of this? Because once it is annexed in, it pays city taxes, helping to pay for our police department. If it's not annexed into the city, we won't get any money helping to pay for city services, but the sheriff's office will be the primary responder to the incident. So part of our cost of services analysis and trying to understand long-term, what kind of densities, what kind of development do you hit some kind of a break-even point? But those are the issues that we face on both police and fire side.
Thank you, Councilmember Kennedy. And Councilmember Neese.
Yes, I want to talk about the zoning just for a minute. If I look at the area to be annexed, that's the same area we're looking to be rezoned, or the whole thing?
Correct. Yeah, the area that is, as shown on here, the area that is kind of outlined in red, that is the whole area that is being annexed, an 18-acre portion. And then the portion that is being, I'm sorry, the whole 18 acres is what is intended to be rezoned tonight, and then the area that is marked in the dashed green lines is what is intended to be annexed.
Okay, the question I have for you is, if we did not rezone that area, what would it be?
It would have to remain rural residential 3 as it is now. Part of the issue is that RR3, rural residential 3, is not a zoning designation recognized by the city. So if you, for instance, say yes to the annexation, but say no to the zone change, that annexation is null and void, because there would not be a valid zoning designation on that lot by the time it's annexed in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. But to clarify, to follow up on Councilmember Kennedy's, the area north of that, that's already zoned N3, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so we're changing that from N3 to N2.
Yep.
What type of homes can be built in N2?
Within the N2 zoning currently, it allows for single-family dwellings, so 1 dwelling unit per building, as well as duplexes, which is 2 dwelling units per building. Builders have some freedom of choice as to how they have that duplex, whether they're top, bottom, side by sides, back fronts. The specifics of each building is something that we take a look at the time of either a master site plan submittal or building permit.
Okay. And then you mentioned during the map that around the different surrounding properties, this one area it looks like to the south and to the east is a P&D, and you mentioned there's several different zones in there. But what specifically is bordering the zone that goes down whatever street that is, 58th Street?
Merritt Street. So the areas that are immediately adjacent to Merritt Street next to Lot 6A1, those are zoned N4, large lot residential. And then all the areas that are kind of south of those immediate lots, so immediately adjacent to Lot 27A, those are all zoned rural residential 3.
Now, I'm sorry, the area in the green there, it says P&D, N1, N2, N3, NXN1, and P1. So specifically, what is there anything that's been developed or partially or planned to be developed on that western border of that area that's green? What's going to be developed across along 58th Street there?
Part of that development, let's see here. Part of that development, Sweetgrass Creek, to my knowledge, they have started putting in roads and is slowly developing the parcel. But that is allowed, but within all of those zones, that allows for a variety of.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I'm trying to clarify on the border, on the far west border of Sweetgrass Creek, what's planned to be developed there?
What is planned to be there currently, that is N2 zoning.
Okay, so N2 is on the far western border of in that green zone. All that's N2.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Councilor Aspenleiter?
And just one last question for maybe Anna regarding the protest. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anna, just so I'm clear, this one's a little bit odd with the protest. So does the valid protest include only the properties within the city that are adjacent to the development? Or is it properties, do we consider the protest from county properties on a city annexation and city zone change as well? Can you clarify that one for me?
We consider both, any property that's within 150 feet of the parcel that's being annexed.
Follow up, Mr. Mayor. And not to dilute this for the conversation tonight, but this is one of those unique areas in which it feels weird to me that the city considers protest from non-city residents on a city action as opposed to considering the protest of city residents. And I guess I'd look for clarification after this meeting about clearly what is our policy on that, and is it written such that we're taking into consideration all parties? Is it vague in the way that that's interpreted, or this is unique, and I'd like some clarity on that part of the action.
And we can do that later. I think it's statutory. So. Very good. We do have to have a public hearing, so I'm going to move to a public hearing, council. We can come back after the public hearing. If you'd like to comment on items 2A, which is annexation, or 2B, this is your opportunity to do so. Please come forward. Just ask that you tell us your name and address, and keep your comments to 3 minutes, please. And if it would help if you can kind of, maybe on the map, kind of point out generally where you live if you're in the neighborhood.
Totally, I will do that. City council members, mayor, thank you for your time. I will try to keep it to 3 minutes, but I have several points, and so I'm going to take my husband's 3 minutes. First and foremost, the zoning issue. Overall, the way that zoning is communicated to the community in and of itself is bad. It's, if you can walk to a place.
I'm sorry, did I get your name and address?
Oh, sorry, Gina Ballard, 5806 Merritt Street. I live in the thing that says N4, right there. If you can walk to a place, it's your community. I can walk to several places that have been developed that I was never given any notification of zoning changes. The zoning change that was put together for this particular property was on Rimrock. I don't rarely go west on Rimrock. I would have never seen it had I not got something in the mail. The annexation of Merritt was never communicated to anybody who lives on Merritt or anybody within 150 feet or anybody in that community in a way other than posting it in the mail, posting it in the newspaper. I communicated it to several of my community members because of the fact that I looked at your agenda. That is the only way some people found out about it. That is not good communication. The development of the west end of Billings is a lot. We have not enough schools. We do not have enough services, police, hospital, emergencies. We continue to develop the west end, and the roads are not developed with it. Rimrock is a prime example, but even if you look at 58th, there is development going on 58th that is a Zone 4 pump station. Water line is going down 58th, and nobody had the foresight to say, hey, we're going to be building communities on 58th between 54th and 56th and 54th and 58th, and we're looking at putting this in and other developments around the area. We didn't even think that, hey, let's put a wider road, put a shoulder on the road, put sidewalks in. No, I looked at the plans for the Zone 4 pump station. There is nothing but a replacement of the road that is there on 58th. That road is narrow. People travel extremely fast on it. When MDT moved 62nd over to onto 58th, people drove down that road around 50 miles an hour. Neighbors, I was in fear for them. There are neighbors who walk on that road with their dogs, with their family. Kids go to Ben Steele on that road. It is short-sighted to make such a change and put in a water line and then not create a community area road with shoulders and sidewalks. Those are my overall concerns, along with the idea that there has never been any kind of cost analysis that has been done for rural properties being rezoned into the city. Specifically on the Merritt development, there were issues with the Glen Abbey development there was flooding issues. You're going to have the exact same issues with this new development. Dewatering is greatly impactful to people who utilize wells. I use a well, a lot of my neighbors use wells. I do not use it for my potable water, but I do use it for my irrigation. There have never been good dewatering studies done or considered by the city of Billings for how it affects the water table. This area is in constant development. Glen Abbey has been being developed for over 5 years. There's 3 homes that are in it, 2 almost finished, 1 in partial finish. Wild Rose is the development that you're talking about before, P and D, N1, N2, N3. That is one of your first rezonings for the city in that mixed development. It has been going on for, I think, 3 years now. There's nothing but a few roads near the Mormon church on 56th, I believe it is, or 55th. I always get those two confused. Again, the annexation of Merritt was not communicated to the neighbors. Rimrock Road is completely and utterly overcrowded, and you guys were discussing whether or not there could be a road besides Merritt. There are opportunities for it to come on the actual property owners from 62nd over versus going down Merritt. They also have no development proposal that we can look at to see what kind of housing, what kind of community that they're looking at developing. The other thing I would hope you would consider and actually give community information to is the people that live on Merritt. There's only 5 of us, but we would be broken, I can tell you, my house, if I had to pay $30,000 to have a sidewalk and a new road. I don't think that that's something that you should consider lightly. This is very impactful to our community, and I really feel that we are developing without thinking about the future of Billings and how these communities we're trying to develop will develop as they grow. it's kind of a patchwork instead of actually a full development. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Teresa Ehrlich. I live at 5819 Merritt. In June, I'll be here 50 years. And I can't tell you how many times I've said Billings doesn't plan anything. One of the things in the zoning meeting that we asked about was the traffic management. And we were told that it's somebody else's department. But you can't do that. You have to plan everything all at once or it won't work. She referenced Glen Abbey. You tend to approve everything and then you run roughshod over everyone who's already there. That subdivision caused, I don't know how many thousands of dollars worth of damage to the neighboring subdivisions. And unless you collect taxes on unfinished houses, you haven't made a dime off of it in 6 years. Just now in the last month, somebody's moved in. But, you know, the one house, she says it's partially finished. It's been partially finished for 2 years now. It's abandoned as far as I can tell. So you have that subdivision there, and you have another one on just west or east of 54th. I think what we need to do is just sit back and see how those develop and if we really do need the housing, because what you're talking about changing now is irrigated farmland. And I don't think we can do without that. So that's my thing. I would like to see it stay the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jody Goddard, and I live at 5811 Merritt. I'm also opposing the zone change, and I know I had sent an email to some of you asking you, if you did not live in our area, to drive by and look at it. Rimrock is a mess. I have to come out onto Rimrock every day I work in the Heights. And it's terrible, the amount of time I have to sit there to even get on Rimrock. And now you're gonna wanna use Merritt to put an exit out into the subdivision to put more people on 58th, and we already sit there waiting. I also felt that if the property wanted to be sold, what he has there in his annexation of already city property, then that's up to the seller to make the two entrances. One could easily go on 62nd and the other one off of Rimrock. Rimrock also has a lot more traffic now that the Skyline, is that what that's called? Skyline up Zimmerman? Skyway, thank you. Skyway has opened up. The traffic is backed up even to get up Zimmerman, which I travel every day to get to the Heights, is backed way up on to Rimrock. I don't think the zone change is meeting the criteria of especially number 4, which has to do with the roads. And I also did not get any notice of annexing us into city. We live in the county because that's where we want to live. If we wanted to live in the city, we would have bought in the city. I guess at this time, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening. My name's Lance Brady. I live at 2916 Mickey Wright Lane, which is just north across Rimrock Road from the area to be annexed. We've lived there 23 years. My background is 40 years professional civil engineer. I'm retired now. I've also already sent written comments to some of the council members. So I just wanted to talk about one of my concerns, which has already been talked about, and I appreciate some of the comments that you folks have already made about the traffic and the transportation out in that area. I'd like to just quickly say the new roundabout is great, so everybody involved in that, kudos for that. As far as this area to be annexed, one of my comments that I submitted in writing had to do with the access to this area, which I agree with, I think, a lot of what people have said about Merritt Street. I can't imagine 120 homes using that as either the single or the primary access. When I look at the platted maps, 60th Street makes so much sense. That would be one potential new entrance onto Rimrock, but I would trust the traffic engineers would not allow more than that. But 60th Street, when I look, the plat on that runs from Rimrock all the way down to Grand. And I think the southern half mile of that is already in. And then also the road from the north end of that running over Colton that runs over to 62nd is already in. So I'm just strongly encouraging, I don't know if it can be a condition for what you're looking at approving, but somehow a condition that this new annexed area would absolutely make use of 60th Street. And what, if that's developing it the full other half mile to the north, or at least developing it enough so that they have I would think their primary entrance and exit would be from the annexed area would be over to 60th, and then they could either go on Colton or down to Grand. But yeah, I just making that strong recommendation that if it can be a condition, great. But anyway, consider that. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any other public comment? And if there's anybody else, go ahead and make a little line there so we know when we're done.
Hi, Tammy Cosgrove. I live on 58th Street, 2508 58th Street. And I just wanted to reiterate that if this subdivision is so necessary, that's assuming that that huge Dan Wells subdivision is going to fill up and empty all of their traffic onto 58th Street. Because the Dan Wells subdivision is even bigger than the proposed. And they've got one egress on 54th, and then the other one comes out right across from my driveway. So I'm going to have hundreds of people coming out onto 58th, that's emptying right there, as then, assuming that that's going to be filled up because it's obviously we need this new one. And so then you've got the other half of the people coming from the new development emptying onto 58th Street, which at the right now, trying to get out onto Rimrock Road with the current traffic, with no Dan Wells and no new subdivision, is horrendous. I mean, there's no way if I had to go left out of there and work, west or east instead of west, I could get out. The only way I can do is gun it and go right when the traffic suits me. So anyway, I'm just saying that judging not from just this subdivision, but also the one that is already in the works, and assuming that that's going to be filled is just going to be a bottleneck, especially with Merritt. You have to understand that that street is only about 4 houses, and it's one street or one house deep from Rimrock Road. So you're just kind of creating a reason to put a second road in there, not creating a solution, because those people are going to come out, they're going to have a bottleneck to get onto 58th, and then it's only one street south of Rimrock. So trying to get and turn left, which would be the assumption, there's no room. They're going to be continually waiting there forever if that's really the spot for the second street. Anyway, that's what I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you.
Just a point of order, I think we skipped over the developer.
Yeah, I was thinking that. We'll come back to that at the end of the.
I think this is the developer.
Hi. You are the developer?
I am.
Okay, good. We were certainly going to come back and give you a chance, but If you want to use this time now, and we won't be slavish about the 3 minutes, but go ahead and
I'd be
introduce
happy to wait, either way, whatever.
Well, we'll make sure you have an opportunity. If you want to wait until you hear from the rest of the public, that's fine too.
Sure, we can do that.
Was there,
Thank
sir?
you.
Are you, okay, was there any other public comment, or we'll just close the public hearing? Any other public comment? Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Laura Kelly, and I'm at 252 58th Street West, and I am opposing the zone change. Number one, Rimrock Road is extremely busy right now the way it is. And then as Tammy was saying, you have Dan Wells that is not even, well, somewhat started, and when he gets all the houses in there, that is gonna create Rimrock to be extremely busy, as well as 58th Street. 58th Street cannot handle that kind of traffic as well. It's going to cause first responders, it's going to cause chaos for first responders. They have a hard time, because I've spoke to a couple people that are first responders, and they have a hard time with Rimrock the way it is. So every minute, if someone is in a wreck, and every second counts, life or death. We all have to take that into consideration when we are adding more homes and more population onto those roads. Safety transportation is just one main thing, which leads me to keeping the zoning the way it is. We can still bring homes into that area, just not that congestion of traffic that goes along with it. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Any other comment?
So mine is a more of a question than a comment, and I don't need you to answer to me, but just in general talk about it. But
Well, go ahead and tell us
oh,
your.
Doug Wild. And I mean, I'm not going to give my opinion one way or the other as far as whether the zone change should happen. With current state law, that northern section, the density is the same, whether the zone change happens or not. So I think that's one thing to point out. But my question, and that I don't know that's been talked about, what is the cost ramification to those owners on Merritt for that street to be annexed? I don't know if that's been talked about enough or reiterated to them. I mean, they obviously don't have a choice as to whether that annexes or not. It's not their street, it's a public street. But is there a cost ramification to them, whether it be taxes or whatever? That's something, like you said, it's a nuance. I'm curious the council's opinion on what that is, or what the legal issues on that. That's all.
Very good, thank you. That's an item we'll ask the developer to comment on, both the cost of developing the street, who's paying for that. And since they would not be part of the city, they wouldn't pay any taxes, so I don't know if there's any cost, direct cost to them. But any other public comment? I don't see any, so we'll close the public comment period. But we did, I apologize, I didn't give the opportunity of the applicant to comment. So if the applicant wants to come forward, please do. And your agent or whoever you want as your team.
Hi. Good evening. My name's Trent Parks. I live at 2259 Glen Eagles. I've been a Billings resident since 1992, and we've had the privilege of building over 125 homes in our local community since 2012. We're working in the nearby subdivisions of Grand Peaks, Mont Vista, and Sundance. All three of these communities are almost out of lots to build homes in. The economy the last few years has been tough on everyone, and we've tried our best to continue to provide nice homes at affordable prices. Our city, like many others, faces a supply and demand challenge of affordable homes, and we're doing our best to be a part of that solution. The majority of our clients have been retirees and people looking to downsize. Our homes have had a minimum of 3 beds and 2 baths, along with 2 and 3 car garages. We continue to make an impact in our community, not only through our housing, but also through our gifts, most recently to youth hockey and the Yellowstone Valley Animal Shelter. My team and I look forward to the opportunity to bring another quality community to Billings and provide the city's residents with more housing options. We look forward to working with city staff, local companies to create more good paying jobs and providing more quality homes for the city of Billings.
I bet you'll open for some questions.
Sure.
Okay, just where we left off, can you address the development of Merritt Street? Annexation agreement puts that on you. What does that cost? What does that cost?
So we haven't gotten a full site cost of that yet, but I do understand we would be responsible for paving and for the city water connection to loop the water.
Okay, no estimate, even ballpark?
On the water side, no. The paving I would expect to be somewhere, around $30,000. It does already have curb and gutter.
So only $30,000 total?
For just the paving, not including any water service, so that would probably be more expensive than the paving portion. If I were to take a wild guess, I would guess somewhere around $75,000 for the whole thing.
Oh, okay. All right. Other questions? Councilmember Neese, Councilmember Boyette?
Thank you, Mayor. Does that development of Merritt Street include the sidewalks?
To my understanding, it did not, with the SIA that was drafted.
Okay. And then on 58th Street, the development, is it going to be developed to a much wider street than it is now? Or what are you doing on, what's the plan for 58th Street?
So our property does not abut 58, so we wouldn't have anything to do with 58's development.
So where the annexation's going, we're annexing 58th, who's developing 58th? Because it isn't that, I guess that's not gravel and that's paved?
It's currently paved, yeah.
Okay.
And then the city owns the southern portion of that, and they would be adopting the, I guess, the small T in green that you see there.
Okay, and then maybe this is to city staff, is who's paying for the maintenance of Merritt Street and 58th Street since it's surrounded by county property?
So that was the goal, is the county wanted to give that to the city. We would pay for the development of it, and then the city would pay ongoing maintenance to maintain.
Okay, so city is going to pick up the cost for maintaining it. Okay.
Correct.
Has there been, again, let me ask you a question, because this is kind of concerning for me. I know these are county residents, but this is a dead-end street. They're probably walking across the street. Their dog runs loose in the street, and suddenly we're going to have a lot of homes driving down Merritt Street. They're not going to be able to walk in the street anymore. Is there anything that can be developed as far as putting sidewalks in so they can stay safe off of the road, because they don't have sidewalks there now?
That would be up to engineering, and so far their direction, we have not received anything. If, they wanted to put in a sidewalk at any point, they certainly could. From what we've received, we would have to extend sidewalk east-west along Rimrock.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Boyette?
I guess that was kind of my question. When we build a street, you probably don't, but we usually put in sidewalks on both sides. Would that be covered under would you be paying for that, or would the city have to pay for those sidewalks? I don't know who would know that. Hunter or Chris?
So Deputy Mayor Boyette, Mayor and Council, and please, Mac, correct me if I'm out here. So, especially in this scenario, it really depends in part on what the annexation agreement or ultimately the requirement is. A piece of property in the city, this body has the authority to order in sidewalks or curb. That's done through a special improvement district paid for by the homeowner. That's one bookend. The other bookend would be, which sounds like is part of this conversation, in this unique scenario where you're patching together county, city, and development, is this developer going to be mandated as part of a condition of the project to pave the road and put sidewalks in, thus saving that from being a cost that would go on those homeowners, but adding to the cost that developer is investing, which will raise the prices of the lots that get sold. So it's not really a complicated thing, but it is a politically sensitive thing as to who should pay, who's fair to pay, and when does it get done, or does it get ignored until some point at which people just really want that sidewalk and safe pedestrian walkway.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember, whatever your name is. Owen.
I do, but
Jennifer.
not for the developer. Is that all right, Mayor?
Absolutely,
Okay,
sure.
so I guess I wanted to ask, I don't know who has an answer to this, maybe Wyeth. Why is the Glen Abbey area not developing? Do we know what's going on there? Are there permits not getting filed? We have no idea? It's okay, you can just say no if you don't know. Okay.
There were high groundwater issues in that
Sure.
project.
So then that leads me into my question to Mac. Can you walk us through how traffic study is going to unfold in here? If you have a significant subdivision up here that isn't developing because there's water issues to get solved, and then you have this potential coming in here, when's the traffic study going to happen? What's it going to include? You know, I feel like I'm not a dumb person, but I really struggle to get my head around what kind of scope we have, when we're going to do them, when improvements will be ordered. So can you just walk us through this scenario, please?
Sure. So the when would be, when we receive an application for, what is gonna be developed on the ground, is it 20 homes on large lots, or is it, 80 homes, is it 100 homes? I can't tell you that, I don't have a plan to review, but that would be the time when we would, review the traffic study, for this project.
And are we going to factor in the subdivision across the street as it is now, fully built?
I believe that's, and I'm 90% sure that project had already gone through a traffic study at the time of subdivision. So I think that study does identify improvements to 58th Street along the frontage there. 58th Street is a collector on our transportation plan.
So, sorry, Mayor, I don't mean to
go ahead.
belabor this point, but maybe you could just say more words. So is the subdivision going to be, is it now in the traffic model? Will your study assume those 58th Street improvements have been completed? Just talk us through this.
Which subdivision?
Sorry, the Glen Abbey, the one across the street that isn't being developed right now.
Well, the one to the east is what I'm calling Sweetgrass Creek. That one, I believe, has already had a study and has said, okay, here's our impacts, here's what we are constructing, improving. It's probably has some cash that went to the Rimrock improvements. Yes, so this one, the one we're considering tonight, would be an additional study that would say, okay, that baseline, here's what would have to be done to mitigate any impacts from this project.
So your modeling will assume that they've done all their impacts in the other
Yes,
subdivision, even though they're not completed?
they're cumulative, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mac, while we've got you, I'm looking at the first paragraph of the annexation agreement. I recognize I am jumping to item 3, but the annexation question obviously is largely impacted by what we can do in the annexation agreement. It requires 3 access points to this property, to Rimrock Road and Merritt, and a connection to the west to 60th. What are the options in the future to the south? Is that the equivalent of 59th? We always want to have a grid and as many connections to property as possible. So ultimately, is it likely that there'll also be a access to the south, which would take a lot of pressure off Rimrock? I don't know about going west to 60th, because people aren't going to want to do that if they're going east. But can you address the future access to the south?
Yeah, I can't speak to how the property would be developed, but, possible access to the south from a connectivity standpoint might make sense.
But is there a roughed in even?
South.
Isn't that the midpoint? Wouldn't that call for 59th? Do I have it right? 58th on the right, 50 and 60th, and 59th right smack in the middle?
Correct.
So isn't it likely that the city, following our connectivity requirements and our regulations, is going to require a connection along 59th to the south?
Yeah, that's, yes.
Okay, all right. Other questions for the developer or for Mac, for anybody else? Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things were mentioned in public comment. I want to talk to City Administrator, maybe Wyeth, who knows about the dewatering that was mentioned. I know DEQ, state really regulates a lot of wells, things like that. What responsibility does the city have to do as far as water studies and the developments of them? And the impact that developments have on the water.
Councilmember Neese, Mayor and Council, I'm going to definitely need some help. I certainly know there's been several analyses I've seen or heard of over the past 5 years, but to the depth of that and by whom, I'll let Wyeth first weigh in.
Thank you.
Councilmember Neese and Mayor and Council, I guess a couple things, clarification. So the property that gets annexed into the city, as you are aware, would then use city water and city sewer. So they would not be utilizing the groundwater in that area for the actual future potable, water for the homes, and sewer would be obviously not septic. It would be sewer going out of that area. So there's that in terms of the effect on what's the current groundwater situation. I will say that, yes, the city's actually, and we're waiting for some final information from the Bureau of Mines and Technology, who have done another study of the west end, the entire west end of Billings, and are looking at the future of the aquifer out there. And basically it's sort of not if, but when, in terms of that aquifer is already going down as property isn't flood irrigated. Existing subdivisions are already experiencing that, and we also have an issue with nitrate levels in the soil already up. So that really puts you eventually into a if you're not connected to a municipal system, I guess I'll be surprised how you can develop in the county out there over time. Now, not tomorrow, but that's out there. So we do have analysis going on looking at that impact across the entire west end, but it's not specific to like one little area. It's looking at the whole area. But this development, obviously going into the city, there's requirements and issues with, like, if you're excavating, obviously that you're not affecting water levels and stuff, but that's way outside of mine. That's all on the engineering side, and the city's worked through that in other areas out there, but not in terms of utilizing the water that's in the ground. That would not happen because these developments would be using city water.
Yeah, I guess I want to make sure that the city do they or do do they have to look at different water studies that impact the properties around it? For instance, developing this property, suddenly maybe the wells next to the property go dry in a year or two. Is there any type of requirement the city has to consider when looking at annexing or zone changing this property?
I'm not aware of that. I don't.
State doesn't require any of that, so, okay.
No.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? I hate to belabor the merit issue, but can anybody from staff, I'm looking at, where in the annexation agreement does it require the development of merit? I apologize, it does require the access in paragraph 1. Yeah, I apologize, paragraph 6, Merid Street shall be paved in accordance with city standards at developer's cost. Answered, questioned, asked and answered. Okay, we've had the public hearing. Council, you've heard from the developer, you've heard from staff. How do you want to proceed? Is there a motion on this matter? Is there further discussions or further questions? Councilor Raffler.
Mr. Mayor, just for procedural clarification for me, are we taking a motion on 2A and then on 2B?
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, we do need to address these in order and separately. So the first one up would be the annexation. We can't rezone what we don't have. So that's why annexation has to come first.
All right.
Then Councilor Ripsis, go ahead. Oh, I apologize. This gentleman wanted to comment earlier. I'm going to open it up. Go ahead. Just tell us who you are.
My name is J.W. Pappas. I'm an engineering consultant for the developer. One additional piece of information I'd like to relay to the council and to the mayor that this property, 27, was actually previously annexed into the city at one point. And the developer went through the de-annexation process. So this property at one point was already annexed into the city. So I just wanted to provide that information to you guys as well too, in case you guys are not aware of that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. We left off with Councilmember Aspenlider. So Councilmember Aspenlider, were you? Nope. Okay. Councilmember Rupsis, I
All right.
apologize.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just go ahead and get the motion on the table so we can start discussion. Having conducted a public hearing, consider written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve a resolution conditionally approving annexation 24-04 as recommended by staff.
Okay, motion is for approval consistent with the staff recommendation. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Joy. Discussion, Councilmember Rupsis, Councilmember Joy, did you want to speak to your motion? No? Councilmember Joy?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is kind of an unusual situation, and I seconded the motion, but I'm not sure which way the council is going to feel about this. It's Rimrock, the transportation on the west end is very frustrating. That's very obvious from the public comment. It's very frustrating to feel like the roads aren't carrying traffic at capacity, but it isn't also everything that the city has control over. That does not mean that we can be blinded to the impacts of what we don't control. What we do control, we have to make decisions on, but there are things outside of our control that have those impacts. I'm not sure. So having sat on council for quite a few years now, I'm very sensitive to the comments that are made by people who have not had on their radar changes that are coming, and they receive a postcard in their mail, and they're like, oh my goodness, things are changing around me, things that they didn't think about, things that weren't on their radar, and I am sympathetic to that feeling of, oh my goodness, what are they going to do? One of the difficulties as we know, as was mentioned, the school district does not have many schools out on the west end. This is a very big issue, but at one time, models for development where you made a subdivision, you created a school. That model went away. Subdivisions were added, schools were not added. So you can see how that impacts development when that model breaks down. You can go to other parts of the city and there are schools in very many subdivisions so that it's within walking distance. Once that model broke down, it didn't happen anymore. And we have situations of children who are not anywhere close to the schools they have to attend. I don't know the answer to why that broke down. I don't understand how it broke down, but it is an impact on our community that we have areas that are developing and there are no schools. So that's a very critical issue. It isn't one of the issues that this particular motion addresses. It isn't really within the city council purview, but if we have a fire department that is responsible for putting out fires in an area, and we don't consider that as an area for annexation, we aren't able to count on those property tax to help to fray those costs. So I'm supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Boyer, Councilmember Asplundh?
Just a reminder, there was a valid protest, Mayor. Could you verify how many votes we need?
Yeah, this would be 2/3. We're all present, so that would be 66% times 11 would be 8, I believe.
But not on the annexation, it's just on the
Oh,
zoning.
I apologize. Yeah, we're only talking about the zone. That does not apply to the annexation. That's just a simple majority is sufficient for annexation. Councilmember Asplundh?
So this is where I'm going to get a little bit crossed up with 2A and 2B. I'm not going to support this. I don't think that this was the right approach. I'm opposing it not because of the traffic. I'm not opposing it because we don't need housing. I'm not opposing it because of the type of zoning. I think this approach was done not in the best way, but in the cheapest way. this should have been considered to annex in all the way over to 60th Street, and the developer should have been developing from north to south on that property, including 60th Street and another access lining up with Arnold Palmer. That would have given 2 points of ingress egress onto Rimrock. That would have left Merritt out of this issue. That would have taken away the need to annex Merritt, the need to annex 58th Street. I think the way that this annexation agreement is being written lets the developer off the hook of what we would normally require to be done on Merritt Street with building sidewalks. It takes the developer off the hook in sewer extensions potentially down Merritt. It does require a water loop, but that water loop would have been created if we would have developed it off of 60th. It also takes away any requirement of the developer to improve and widen 50th Street, which if this was done city to city, we would have required the developer on the adjacent part of that property to widen 58th Street to collector status. We would have required them to put in the water and the sewer extensions down 58th Street that aren't there or are planned to be there at some point in time. We would have required them to put in sidewalks on 58th Street. This is not being done in the best way. This is being done in the cheapest way. And I don't think that that's a good approach for the West End. I don't think that's a good approach for this neighborhood. And I would encourage the developer to consider withdrawing this application, because if it goes down, it's dead for 12 months. And then you're sitting on the property for 12 months. I'm going to be a no on this. I'm going to be a no on the preceding votes, because I don't think this was done the best way. I think this was done the cheapest way. And that is certainly going to have an impact on the neighbors and the neighborhood. And it's something that we need to take into consideration.
Very good, thank you. Further discussion, Councilmember Rowan?
Mayor, I think I'm inclined to agree. Actually, the zone change doesn't particularly bother me, but the annexation does. I found the answers on traffic and traffic studies to be unsatisfactory, so I am concerned about traffic. But I wonder, Mayor, to Councilmember Aspenleiter's point, you know, we normally take a break, we didn't take a break. Maybe now's the time to take a break and give the developer a minute to reflect on whether or not they'd like to withdraw the annexation petition and have a moment to consider the opportunities to have a different traffic and transportation approach. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I'm similarly inclined not to support. I don't like it when we don't have predictability in zoning and annexation, but here I think we could have required a little bbit more out of annexation and didn't, and I'm concerned. I'm really concerned about this area.
Very good. I'm not opposed to taking a break, as we have not done that. The developer did want to come forward, but as he does, Councilmember Joy, did you have a point?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just wanted a clarification on a factual matter from the Mac Fogelsang. If the property does not abut against 58th, is this developer responsible for the cost of the improvement on 58th if the property does not abut 58th? Thank you.
Yeah, Councilmember Joy, that's a loaded question. You know, there's not a subdivision regulation that would require that. However, council could, by the annexation agreement, make that a requirement.
Just a clarification follow-up.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Have we in other instances required developers whose property does not abut a street to pay for those developments, particularly water or road improvements, when they have not abutted that particular street? So I'm asking you, if the council right now would choose to do that, are we consistent with our policy? Are we being predictable and consistent with our developers? Are we doing a one-off? Thank you.
Yeah, and I might have to think about that one. Historically, I would say no, as far as the what I'm going to say, off-site road improvements for 58th Street. But back to I mean, there's other parts. The water would be a necessity to loop, so that would be consistent with with what we're talking about, reimbursement for water and sewer, like in Rimrock, that is frontage, that's consistent with how we do that, but I would say it's probably, not consistent to require, 58th and street improvements. I'm talking about curb gutter sidewalk down 58th where they don't front that.
Thank you.
Okay, again, the developer did want to come forward, but Councilor Kennedy, you wanted to get a point in? Or a question or something?
Thank you, Mayor. For many, many years, the Sunny Cove Fruit Farm subdivision, because it's been split up so much, has been a lot of problems with the roads and everything else. I'm going to follow suit, and I wouldn't, I will vote against the annexation and the zone change. I think this needs to be cleaned up before it ever comes back to us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Go ahead.
Yeah, the only comment I wanted to make was the original design that we did for this property had two accesses, two off of Rimrock. And so our original intention was to never use Merritt. And the only reason that it ever became part of the conversation was because that was a requirement by city staff, not of our design or trying to save money.
Councilor Rowan, Councilor Raspler.
Well, Councilmember Asmelater will ask smarter questions than I will, but so if there were to be a requirement to essentially build out 60th or put in a 59th connecting to Arnold Palmer, would you oppose that?
So what they requested to us was actually to create one road across from Arnold Palmer. So that was going to be a requirement of the subdivision.
And we'll sort of call that 59th, essentially.
Yeah, and I don't think the city wanted another named road, so they requested we extend Arnold Palmer south.
Okay, so that's in your plan currently is to put that in, or that's part of what you got rid
Yes, that
of?
was a requirement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Councilor, I'm sorry, we're done?
I'm done, yes.
Councilor Raspler.
So this is a comment, and it's to clear up what you said, because I understand what you said, but you've also developed long enough in this community that you know that that was not possible. By your own design standards, you could not fit that many approaches on a road with that kind of speed limit because it doesn't meet the city's design standards. So I understand that you said that you proposed it that way, but you also knew that it couldn't work that way because not only do you have Arnold Palmer on the north, you also have Mickey Wright, which if you try to squeeze another intersection in there, you don't meet intersection separation distances, which are in our standards, and you can't meet the separation and the design standards of the city of Billings. So I think it's misleading to say that we tried to fit another one in, but the city wouldn't let us, because you know that that's not possible by our own design standards.
I'm not an engineer, so I wouldn't know that, Scott. The other part of that is my understanding was we would have to do a traffic study, and whatever turn lanes or requirements would be required for safe ingress and egress, we would follow. But I myself am not an engineer and would not understand how that would work.
But you have professionals on staff that do know that.
Point of order.
Yeah, we'll go ahead. Council, let's take a break. And staff, when we do come back, because we normally would take a break at 7:30, I'm going to have just a question on development of sidewalks on Merritt. Specifically, is there adequate right-of-way? If that were a requirement of the annexation agreement, could that be required? Go ahead, we'll come back. It's 8:02, we'll come back by 8:10. If everyone can take a seat, we will get started. Okay, thank you, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for your patience while we took a much-deserved break. Before we did take a break, the issue came up of a potential mandatory delay if the zoning request were to go down. And that's just educational, I think, for all of us. I think it would be helpful for the council and for the developer and for the public to have a little clarification on that issue. I don't know with planning or Gina and legal, there is a certain consequences by statute if a zone change goes down. I don't think that's the case for the annexation. That could come back next week in theory, but could somebody address that? Chris, who do you want to designate, or is there a volunteer from staff to?
I'm not going to make a designation, Mayor. I'm going to look to them as to who can best answer the question. So to be clear, what we want to understand is if any of these steps are we got several steps. We got annexation, we got zone change, and then we got some other steps. What a no to any of these steps means, what the impact of that is for the landowner and or developer.
Yeah,
So-
and specifically annexation and the zone change.
Okay.
So Mayor and Council, I guess simply, if you don't approve the annexation tonight, then we don't go any further tonight because you can't consider property that's not in the city at that point. We'd have to, you can come back with an annexation petition. There's no delay or time frame on that. So the applicant could turn around and repetition, or you could say, let's reconsider this at a future meeting for the annexation. But yeah, we wouldn't go to the zoning then because you wouldn't be in this, it wouldn't be in the city. So we'd have to, I guess, dig more into if it's just done then, and then they'd have to petition again for annexation, and then what does that mean for the zone change?
Okay, but there's no mandatory delay or wait for a new annexation petition?
No.
And then
No.
could you just address the consequence of a no vote on zoning?
You mean if you annex it?
If
and
we
then-
were to
Well,
annex.
and we're trying to, I guess, my understanding was that our code now doesn't have default zoning, so I guess we're trying to sort that out. Like, you either zone it or you don't, because the current zoning is not a city zoning. So it can't stay RR3. But I think we're trying to figure out if there's something that we're not aware of.
Okay, we may have some requests for clarification there. Councilmember Rapslider?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor Wythe. But if we have a not affirmative, a denial of the zoning, which would then mean, by Hunter's explanation earlier, if the zoning dies, the annexation is null and void and it all goes away. We still have taken action on zoning on that property, and my understanding was if we take action on the zoning of a property, then that property sits in moratorium for 12 months before it can come back with another zone change.
So, yeah, so I think, so part of the point earlier was with if you annex the property, yes, and then if you were to not approve the zone change, then basically two things can happen. Then it's written in so the developer cannot enter the annexation agreement, and the annexation then doesn't go forward. And correct, if it's a not approval, basically a denial of the zoning, then yes, it's a 1-year period to wait. Yeah, I guess if I could I'd like to just say a couple things before and then wherever we're going here, but I guess I'm a little concerned about some of the comments that are basically saying, oh, well, we're not looking at the big picture, and this is all like, pandemonium out there if this gets annexed and this part gets zoned. And I guess I just want to push back on that a little bit. And Mac already mentioned, we're already looking at multiple access points for this property. Merritt is only one of them, but it would be one, but there would be others. We're looking at, as additional development and annexation happens to the west, that there'd be other connections, there'd be connections to the south. So it's not happening in its own little microcosm in terms of any of that with where this is going out there. The same thing was looked at and was hashed out with the Sweetgrass Meadows project to the east in terms of initial, connections that exist off of 54th versus connections that are going to be off of 58th versus connections to the south. So I just want to make sure that we're not sort of making assumptions that somehow that's not going to happen. And then the other thing I just want to mention is that there's a reason Merritt goes to the property line and stops. And we've had this conversation on some other properties and roads on the west end. Like, the expectation is absolutely that was done to connect to future development to the west. So that's assumed, whether it gets built out fully right away or gets paved or, whatever happens there. And the council could certainly put in something into the annexation that would clarify, that a full, residential street build out or whatever was done on that, to connect out to 58th. And obviously, as 58th is completed, that's going to get full collector construction like Mac mentioned. So I guess I just want to make sure, these are all pretty normal things. They're really not, it's not normal, obviously, if you're a property owner on Merritt in the county and you, like Councilmember Joy said, you're not used to change, and change is happening all over out there. And so this isn't the first time, and it certainly won't be the last, that we kind of have to wrangle through that. But there's a method to all this, and there is analysis and traffic impact studies and everything that's looking at this and how everything's going to connect. So it's not going to be like the whole world on Merritt or whatever. That's just not how it's going to get done. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
You bet. Very good. Thank you. I apologize. Who are you signaling to?
I want to say that Councilmember Shaw is now online.
Yes, thank you very much. Councilmember Shaw, you know the routine. Please put your hand up if you'd like to speak, and if we don't recognize you, just go ahead and unmute yourself. Councilmember, Reps, I've seen your hand up first, and then Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. Wyeth, sorry. I meant to grab you before you went away. I thought we aren't there statutory requirements for having to act on a zoning application within so many days after a zoning commission meeting or something like that? And what happens if we don't? I thought there were certain timeframes that we had to hit statutorily.
So, we follow with the process currently now, that it comes to you after the zoning commission action, and then you have those options of what to do, whether you act on it tonight, whether you delay for 30 days, whether you change your findings. So I guess those are the options.
Well, so I
you can
wonder
delay for 30 days.
Yeah.
That's totally acceptable, and you could potentially delay for, more than once. But
the annexation goes down and we can't act on the zoning. How do we meet that kind of code requirement to being able to act on it?
Well, if it's not brought into the city, then it kind of basically ends there is nowhere else to go until we're back looking at getting it in the
It's essentially
city.
no zoning
Yeah.
application then. All right. Mayor, if I could ask one somewhat unrelated question.
Okay.
If the entire property, not just that portion directly, that sub-rectangle that they're doing, but the entire property that they owned, were to be, if they were to bring this back under a different annexation, that would include that so that they could have the connection out to 60th. Would that mean then it would be more than 10 acres? Would then it have to go into the PND process?
So, yeah, our understanding currently would be, given the code, that, this came in under the 10 acre. So if it were to go higher than that, then we would be looking at a PND process.
And more than likely, that would mean higher density than what's even being proposed along Rimrock, and a mix of N1, N2, N3 of some sorts.
I think, potentially they'd have to look at where they have to choose the multiple zoning districts and what would that be, and like you said, the Rimrock frontage versus south.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Mayor. Wyeth, just to clarify, because I'm not quite sure if I understand this, if the annexation fails, the zoning then goes away, right? So they have to reapply for a whole new zoning application?
Well, Councilmember Neese, Mayor Council, basically what you end up with is, you can't, if you haven't annexed the property and the zoning went through the city zoning process, then you're back to how it's zoned right now, and it's still in the county, and you can't go any further.
So in this case, a portion of the property is already in the city. So if the annexation fails, a portion still of the property being requested is still in the zone change. So do we have to address that or not?
I believe the property that's already in the city is already zoned and they could just go ahead and
Isn't that
develop.
it's N3 though, but they're requesting for a zone change and N2. So does that mean we have to address that portion of the zone or that portion
No,
of
I
the
mean, they
property?
would have N3, and they could develop under N3.
Okay,
as
so
it is now.
the zone change, as soon as the annexation if that were to be defeated, the entire zone change would go away, regardless of if
Right,
some of
for
it's
the
still in the.
parcel, right, for
Okay,
what they're
all right.
asking right now, yeah. But the other, yeah, they could continue with what's already in the city. That's my understanding.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, further discussion. We do have a motion before us, Councilmember Nice.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. After looking at this, and I will not support it. I agree with some of the arguments that have been made, and so I will not support the annexation agreement.
Okay, other discussion. Councilmember Gulick.
It's been helpful to have questions and answer some staff on different things. The connectivity is really important for me, for neighborhoods to develop. So, it's interesting in light of our earlier conversation we have. I mean, affordability is an issue. We need to make sure we are developing more housing in our community. We need to develop it in the right way as well. So there's no easy answers here, I would say. But the zone change, again, we're talking about the annexation, I realize, but the zone change, I fully support. It's something, this is a way for a developer to actually be able to provide greater affordability. They can provide slightly more housing in that area, and so that reduces the cost there. So certainly support that. And, it is, I will be supporting the motion. It looks like it's not going to have, I guess the annexation doesn't need to have a supermajority. It's the zoning that needs to have the supermajority. I guess we'll see how this works. So anyhow, I will be supporting the motion.
Very good. Councilmember Joy?
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and I already kind of spoke to my motion, but I'm going to speak again. This property's already been in the city, then got de-annexed. If this fails, we're just pushing a big old problem onto a future council, and these people who have spoken about how much this is impacting their lives, they're going to be even more impacted farther down this road. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Kennedy.
Mayor, I call the question.
Okay, so we will vote on whether to vote, and that's not debatable, and we need 2/3?
You must have a second first. You have to have a second.
If we have a second.
Second.
Okay, several seconds. Second by Councilmember Absent-Lighter.
And yes, 2/3.
And then we need 2/3. In this case, that's 8. So if ready to vote on the motion to approve the annexation, in favor of proceeding to the vote, please raise your hand. Voting in favor of the move to the vote is, everybody with the exception of myself and Councilmember, can you vote against your own motion?
Can I vote against my own motion?
You're voting to go to vote.
Yes.
Okay, I'm the only one on the no side, so we lose. So we will proceed to the vote. And so again, the motion is for approval of the annexation. If we'll do it by raise of the hand. So if in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Voting in favor are Council Members Gulick, Joy, and Rupsis, and Shaw. If voting in opposition, raise your hand. The remainder, Council Members Nice, Owen, Cole, Kennedy, Aspen-Lighter, Boyette. So the motion, and I'm sorry, Councilmember Tidswell. So the motion fails. That does resolve the annexation. We can't rezone what we don't own. And I guess we've had, to Councilmember Nice's point, the zoning on, because it's a package, the portion that's already in the city limits, that zone change also dies, and we do not need to proceed to item 2B. Have I stated that correctly? Well, or C or D, right. Okay. That's the conclusion of staff on that issue.
Mayor, yes, if we just stop at the failure to approve the annexation, that's the cleanest way to progress forward, and the developer, property owner will have a choice to make as to whether they want to come back with something.
Okay, and very good. I still support the annexation at some point, but we'll come back to that when there's another proposal. That concludes item number 2. And all the subparts. So we will move to item number 3, public hearing and first reading ordinance. Would you, Denise, please read item number 3?
Public hearing and first reading ordinance adopting 2021 International Fire Code, IFC. Staff recommends approval.
Jamie, thank you for your patience.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. So I became the fire marshal in February, 7 months ago. And since I become the fire marshal, my number one goal, big picture goal, is to get the 2021 fire code adopted. We've kind of gone circles, and I've explained this a couple different times, but we're the only major municipality that is not in the 2021 fire code. We're still in the 2012. So I did everything I could to make this code adoption a simple, easy process, simple, easy vote for council. I attached the memo that had a clean and a red line version for the ordinance. It included the permit section that we talked about, the water supply safety factor that we addressed in the work section, and then inspections that are specific to the Billings Fire Department. Excuse me. What you see in the existing code that I had in there is basically it combines the city code with the ARMS, the Administrative Rules of Montana, and then I just organized that according to the sections in the IFC. The intent is to be able to perform business as usual. It's only under the 2021 code edition as opposed to the 2012. Staff recommends approval of the 2021 International Fire Code, and I'm here to answer any questions that you guys might have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? There is, I apologize, this is a public hearing. We'll go to a public hearing after questions. Councilmember Kennedy?
Chief, just a quick question. We had a call from from a hotel, and it would, if he had to put all his CO2 and hardwire them, it would cost an exorbitant amount. You said that is not covered under here?
Correct. You're talking carbon monoxide. And so with that specific example, what those individual rooms would require is just carbon monoxide that get tied into 120 volt. They're just plug-in, which they already have. And so I reached out and I confirmed that, and I never heard any response back for him. So
thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions, Councilmember Bernice?
Thank you, Mayor. I thought you said the copy you sent us, the red line copy, included not just the changes from the 21 code the state adopted, but also items that the Billings Fire Department added to that code. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so everything is in red line, so we don't know the difference between what the city of Billings is adding versus what the actual code, the 21 code is, right?
Correct. Yeah, so it would just reflect the specific changes from the existing code. The problem is it gets, I don't want to say convoluted, but you're going from 2012, 2015 to 2018 to 2021, taking our city code, and you're tying that in with the administrative rules of Montana. So for transparency, I put everything all in one document.
But how much of these changes are just the Billings Fire Department and not required by the state?
I can tell you specifically. So, applications and permits. So the sections that are adopted.
What page on the red line?
Oh, sorry, the very front page.
Okay.
Applications and permits, and then permits is adopted. That's sections, the state doesn't have permits, but we do. We have permits for fire protection systems, we have permits for open burning, so those got adopted.
Okay, right.
Construction documents, that's fire protection systems.
Page?
Sorry, the very next page. Sorry, I got them all right in order. Section 106, construction documents, that's adopted because we get construction documents for high piled storage, we get construction documents for fire protection systems. There is a correction, section 107 fees is not adopted. I just noticed that today, and so I'll just have that addressed before we do the second reading. So we don't have fees for permits for the fire department. All the fees come through the building department. Inspection requests, that's adopted. That's where we have general contractors that will install their fire protection systems. It doesn't necessarily go through the building department. They just do the permitting, so they just reach out to me when they do their put in their fire protection systems. We just go and do the inspection on them. Approval required is adopted, and that approval required is, I would look at it as like a phase system. A good example would be like the hospital. So instead of them redoing their entire fire alarm system all at once, we'll allow them to do phases. They just have to notify us so we can go test it. After it's approved, they can just move on to the next phase. And then the last section is just a concealed work, where we'll have contractors reach out to me for sprinkler system, and before they drywall in the sprinkler system, we just call it a rough-in inspection. We'll just go take a look at the piping, the spacing, the hangers, and just make sure they're installed according to code. And that actually is important because we've had issues where we've had contractors actually drop sprinkler heads down through the ceiling but not hook any pipe up on purpose and then sold the pipe. So we call them just rough-in inspections. And it's important too because.
Hey, Marshall, I'm going to just ask you, because the hour is late, just if you can answer the question, which was just what the section is, and if the council member wants a follow-up, he'll ask you, so.
Yeah, any other sections that you've added?
That's it. Those are all of them.
All the other red line is strictly from the state code.
Correct. And just to confirm, all that stuff, that isn't new. That stuff we've been enforcing not since I've been the fire marshal, but been a fire marshal for 15 years. We've done all of those.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Anything else for the marshal? Okay, thank you very much. We'll open up for public comment. This is a public hearing. Are there anybody who would like to comment on the adoption of the 2021 International Fire Code? Please come forward if you do. Anybody? This is a public hearing. Is there any public comment? No one's coming forward. We'll close the public hearing. Council, do we have a motion? Councilmember Joy?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken testimony, I move to approve first reading ordinance adopting 2021 International Fire Code, IFC, as recommended by staff.
Very good. Councilmember Gulick, second. Any discussion on the motion?
Mayor,
Gina?
thank you, if I may. Jamie indicated that there should be that one change to the fees is not adopted. He just said he noticed that tonight, so his recommendation is to include the word "not" in that one section. And I can point that out again if you guys weren't following that. Is that right?
Page 2, section 107, fees is adopted.
James has something about
101.1E.
101.E1E, thank you.
making that change on second reading, but you're saying let's go ahead and include it in the first reading? Is that the point?
I just wanted to make sure that that's what her motion was. I didn't actually hear that, so I just wanted to clarify if her motion included that recommended change.
What's staff's recommendation? Is it to make this change in 107 now, or I heard something about just doing it later in second reading? Is it simple? Is it something we can include in this motion now?
So my recommendation, for what it's worth, if we can just say section 107 fees is not adopted, that's what it was. That's what it was intended. It was just a mix-up.
Okay, so we just add the word "not," so it's not adopted.
Apologize for
Is that a friendly amendment that you can live with, or movement? Okay, and Councilmember Gulick, you had the. Yeah, okay, after extensive consideration, they're good with that. That's their motion. Thank you for that clarification. Any other discussion now on the motion before we proceed to a vote? Okay, motion is for approval with that clarification as part of the motion. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. That concludes item 3. Item number 4. Denise, would you read item number 4?
Tax increment financing assistance from the South Billings Boulevard Tax Increment Finance District to Tropicana Investments 2.0 LLC for Montana Trailhead in partial demolition, 5500 Midland Road, South Billings Urban Renewal Association, Espera Board recommends approval.
Wyeth is our presenter. Wyeth.
Mayor and council, I'm actually not your presenter, but I'm going to work with Dick he's going to get up and speak. We're going to show a couple, some visuals, and then the applicant is also here. So I'll let him start it off. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Dick. Appreciate your patience.
No problem. I'm Dick Zier, 3039 Golden Acres Drive. I am the consultant to the South Billings Urban Renewal Association. Mayor and council and guests and staff. This is a project that we've been extremely excited about from the time I've been involved with this board. I know that my predecessor, Jim Tevlin, has been here a few times talking about the ownership of the old Holiday Inn. Now it's called the Trailshead Inn. And we're here to address that. It is a real problem down there with transients breaking in. And you can see they're talking about the demolition of the rooms, not the tower, but all the other rooms involved with the old trail, with the new Trailshead Inn. So this kind of shows the parking lot, and these are different pictures of how bad a shape this place is in. Transients have been breaking in there, destroying rooms. The neighbors have hired extra security because of this problem. And here's got some more pictures there we can show here. You can see the paving's starting to crumble in different areas. This is the convention center. They'll leave that, and I'll let the developer talk about that a little bit. And you can see some of that pavement's got grass growing through it, and it looks awful. Couple more, I think, and then we can. I'm going to introduce James Malloy. He's the developer on this. Drew Nelson is also with him, and kind of tell you what their plans are for this project.
Gentlemen, welcome, and again, thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for taking the time to consider our request for this grant. I became the owner of this property about 6 months ago, and I think my understanding is you guys are somewhat aware, at least, of the situation there. There was the previous borrower / owner had gone bankrupt, and they had financed the land with one lender on the East Coast, and then they had financed the buildings under a leasehold arrangement with another lender on the East Coast that didn't know the area. So it was doomed to fail. It did, and now you have a property that's blighted and in a horrible situation with a ton of crime going on and so forth in that area, and all the neighbors are concerned about the property. We're since we've purchased it, we've tried to figure out as quickly as we can and ramp up to be able to have the tower be an independent building, and then do the asbestos abatement and the demolition of the older Holiday Inn. So you would have the tower remaining, and then you would have the convention center building in the back remaining. And then the 217 unit hotel that's in between that Dick was showing the pictures of would be demolished. And in fact, if you guys have driven by, you'll see that we've already started that process. And the abatement in the annex building on the backside, was completed, and that building is close to being demolished. It's about 80% gone. But the main building, the really large one, the abatement is progressing very well. We have a little bit of a complication because we don't have a laundry room for the tower. So we just got our permit this week from the city to build the laundry room, and then once that's done, in about 8 weeks, we can finish off the rest of the building. So we're progressing as fast as we can in order to remove that blight, which I think is the main goal of the grant program, and then also to be able to try to increase tax revenue, which from the business side for us, it's a great option. That's our intent as well, is to try to make that business successful. And we will redevelop the land. We've been focusing on the extensive amount of work of doing the asbestos abatement and the demolition, and also getting the permit to make the building independent. But we are doing some preliminary work on the redevelopment side, working with an engineer to get basically a commercial subdivision layout and to build pads. But we haven't gotten anywhere yet on that. It's just preliminary. But that's the intent, is to redevelop that whole area. It's quite a large parcel. It's 13.66 acres. So a lot of opportunity for additional tax revenue, which I'm sure is the goal of the grant program for business development. Just real quickly, a couple of things that we've done to try to at least make the area safer at this point, and we've coordinated with the police, our operations teams, and we have gone ahead and done some improvements and then some safety issues. You may have noticed that we've painted the whole building. We've resealed all the windows. There really wasn't much of any kind of upkeep in that building for a long time. We're trying to make it so it functions and works well with the mechanical systems. We've invested quite a bit of money internally on that. On the safety side, I don't think any of those lights in the parking lot were working. I think they all work but one, and it's a mystery to us. We cannot figure out why it won't work. And then we've also added we're adding to Drew, are the lights on the convention center yet? Okay. There's 36 lights on the outside of that convention center, which some of you may have known. Vagrants have even tried to light fire to the outside of it. We're getting it all lit up. The pictures still show all the trees around if you can roll back to the convention center one, it shows all these trees that are massively overgrown, which is where the homeless and the drug users were going to hide in behind those trees. We've cut all those down just in the last week. So they were all overgrown, causing all kinds of problems, and they were providing hiding spots for people. So we've lit it up, and we're trying to take away the hiding spots. Let's see here. Trying to think of anything else. I think other than that, happy to answer any questions. Would you like to proceed, Dick?
Do you guys have any questions?
Very good. And were you done with your presentation, Dick? And we'll just, you got a little more. Okay, any questions for our developer before we turn it back to Dick? Councilmember Joy?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. There's been I remember back to many, many iterations of what would happen with this building, and I'm very happy that you stepped up and decided to take on a project, I'm sure. How are you going to be using the tower? I mean, it seems to have been a lot of different things over a period of time, but how do you intend to use the tower? Thank you.
You bet. So the tower, the mid-rise tower on that far end, it's got 94 guest rooms. When we go ahead and redo the mechanical systems to make it independent from the other building and bring in also a laundry facility, what it will be, and it will be just what we call in the business a limited service hotel. Similar to what you would think of like a Comfort Inn or a Best Western or a Holiday Inn Express type property. It doesn't have a bar, it doesn't have a casino, it doesn't have meeting space really, other than a couple of small rooms like a boardroom or something like that. It's a much easier property to run. This property couldn't succeed because of all the extra meeting space and convention type facilities, plus the lounge and the bar, and nobody would put enough money into it to make that work. And not to mention the whole building is rotting. I mean, it is literally rotted on the inside. You can walk through and you can see it on the inside of the building. It's just a dangerous place, so nobody'd ever be able to put the money back into it to make that work. So that building by itself will just operate as a limited service hotel. We will brand it in the future. We're trying to get it to a point where one of the brands will actually take a look at it, and we have a couple that have talked to us. So it'll have a national flag on it, and it'll just operate individually that way.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Nice?
Thank you, Mayor. After this is all demolished, I guess I'm wondering, is your plans to build additional hotel there? I mean, what is your plan in the future? Other than just tear it down and have a field there? And then when the convention center, is that all going to also be, you already started working on that, that you're renovating that also? Is that all part of your plan here to?
Yes, so the convention center building is actually in better shape than we anticipated. We've got some water leak issues that we've identified, and they're actually not that bad of fixes. And so that building will be in pretty good shape. We've got to clean up the inside of it, but it's basically just cleanup and kind of removal around it. The main issue there is the parking lot. That parking lot will have to be improved for that building to be, operated. And we're just waiting on a tenant for that. And we've actually had, we thought it would end up being a warehouse space, but the interest has all come from retail users and kind of entertainment users, which kind of threw us for a little bit of a loop. So, but we've had a lot of feedback from about 4 different groups now, and we're just trying to work through and figure out what the best thing is to do there. It hasn't been our priority. It's the tower and the demolition and asbestos have been our priority.
So your intent is to maybe not use it as a convention center, but either sell it off or lease it out for another type of use you're not going to run it as a convention center?
And we're not going to run it as a convention center because you would need that big full-service hotel that they had before in order to fill it. And we're not going to sell it. We're going to hold the land, but the intent is to lease it and so forth and have a grand master plan of multiple different types of pads for different users, like a restaurant, a convenience store. We have reserved a couple acres in the back that we think, at least in planning, that maybe an additional hotel and so forth. I've built about 3 dozen hotels in the West, and so we're happy to try to bring in another one there.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, Dick, thank you. Appreciate it.
Appreciate your consideration.
Well, the request that was approved by Sabura is for $500,000. And it is in our budget. We had budgeted for this project. The project would be eligible for up to $557,944 without land. And so the reasons that I have for recommending approval, this corner is one of the best commercial properties in our district. The Sabura Board of Directors has wanted this property to once again become a viable business. Removal of blight is one of the main goals of our Sabura. The new owners plan to remove approximately 217 rooms that are not part of the high-rise. The existing convention center will be used as a new venture to be determined. The property that is being cleared of the 217 rooms will be used for future development. The future revenue from any development on this property will increase the tax generated in the Sabura TIF district. Transients have broken, like I said before, have broken into this property and destroyed rooms and caused many concerns for all the neighbors to the point where they've hired extra security to protect their own property. And I ask that the council please support this very worthwhile improvement to our district.
Very good. Thank you, Dick. Council, are there any other questions or is there a motion relating to this item? There is no public hearing. Councilmember Kennedy?
I move to conditionally approve tax increment financing assistant from the South Billings Boulevard Tax Increment Financing District to the Tropicana Inn Investments, LLC for the Montana Trailhead Inn, partial demolition, 550 Midland Road, is recommended by the Sabura Board.
Very good. Second by Councilmember Aspenleiter. Further discussion? Did either of you want to speak to your motion? Then Councilmember Nice.
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, I like the project, but I want to ask a question about our policy and procedure because I thought that our Gina, or where's Chris? He's not here. Chris has left the building. Oh,
He's talking to Elvis back there.
Okay, we can
Hey,
wait.
Chris, we had a question for you. Go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to question some of the policy and procedures we have, because I thought our TIF, I don't know if it's a state requirement or our city requirement indicates that they can't have started the project before we give them a grant. And I heard from the applicant say they've already started and have been doing very well on the demolition, which is $1.4 million. So that's the majority of the project. So is this request even a valid request, since they've already started demolition and started some of their work?
So, Councilmember Neese, Mayor and Council, what I'm trying to pull up, and I know it's in the packet here, is the TIF policy, right? It's in our TIF policy. All financial assistance must be approved by the City Council prior to any activity receiving funding. Financial assistance should be, this is Section 2, City of Billings Tax Increment Financing Policy. So that's what I was referring to, is our local policy. So that's not state statute, that's our local policy.
Local
here.
policy.
Yep.
And so this is, I think, the second time I've pointed this out, and I don't remember if it was the borough or the other TIF district did it, but we've got another application in front of us here where they've already started the work, and now they're asking for a grant after the work has started. Can we address why we see applications like this, where the work has already started?
Councilmember, excuse me, Councilmember Neese, Mayor and Council. Yes, there's been some miscommunication, I guess I'll put it that way, just about if an application comes into a district, gets reviewed by the advisory board and gets brought forward in terms of when does it mean that the project could commence, even before the council takes action. I'm trying to rectify that because I agree with what you're saying, and we've been trying to match it up so that a project, and I want to qualify too, there are projects where certain elements are getting done that aren't being funded by TIF, and so there are situations where you have to parse that out. So I don't want to paint too broad a brush, but anyway, that's the situation. So we're trying to get that just to be clear, and the policy is,
Mayor and Council, if I could add, I'm sorry, I read you the first sentence. The next sentence in that same paragraph says, financial assistance should be requested prior to beginning construction.
right, yeah, and I was, right, adding that there's a qualifier there also on the language, so it says should, not must, or whatever that might be, but we are trying to be consistent about those, so.
Okay, thank you.
And Wyatt, just while we got you, in this case, was it requested? It doesn't say approved apparently, but requested. Was it requested before they started construction? In other words, was the application submitted to
Correct.
Sabura?
Correct.
So yeah, the answer to that is
Submitted by
yes.
September 4th?
Yes,
Okay, okay.
and it was submitted, yeah.
Thank
to
you for the clarification.
Okay, very good, thank you. All right, council, we have a motion for approval before you. Further discussion on the motion? Any further discussion before we proceed to a vote? Okay, seeing none, the motion is for approval of item number 4. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Go forth and destroy. And pick up your mess, though, please. Oh, again? What's the score? Man, oh, man. 4-0 at last report. Okay, Denise, would you read item number 5?
Second final reading ordinance amending sections 23-100 through 23-1100, Billings, Montana City Code, BMCC, subdivision regulations to conform to state legislation passed in 2023 and local changes provided by City Council, Planning, Engineering, Parks, and Fire Department staff. Planning Board and staff recommends approval.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Appreciate the patience of everybody in the audience who has been out there waiting for this item. This is second reading. Is there any sort of a staff presentation update? Just tell us where we're at.
Can I just, Mayor and Council, ordinarily, there would not be a presentation on second reading. There are no changes that were made between first reading and second reading. And so,
Right, there was some, there was a slight wording change that we got a comment on, but correct, it's not a public hearing.
So to be clear, it's not a public hearing. However, you did take public comment earlier, and there is no presentation. We're happy to answer questions.
We have a small presentation.
Okay, sorry, apparently we have a
David,
small
please, go ahead.
presentation.
Alrighty, I'm going to just forward right here. At the last meeting we had, the first reading public hearing, there was a question about property. And definition of property on streets that may or may not need to be 24, may or may not need to be 34 feet wide. So it has been proposed amended to street sections that do not require parking or allow for parking, which is also asked about for that particular wording. On both sides must be signed no parking and be approved by city engineering, city planning, city fire marshal. May be reduced to 24 feet back of curb. For example, a street through a golf course that is fronted by a golf course on both sides and an entry road into a subdivision. And then this other paragraph below that was the same thing. It used to say property, and it's proposed to do again, street sections that A, do not require parking. So that was to clarify what, there was some hiccups about property and what that entails and what that encompasses. So that has been changed. And then on August 5th, there was a correction that was going to be made. And we want to just point that out. It's maximum speeds, not minimum speeds.
Okay, Councilmember Roops has changed. So set me straight here. So this is a change made or recommended in second reading from what was approved in the first reading.
Correct.
And only this one, because the other one was previously incorporated. Because I don't see any red line on what was changed on that.
Well, this one used to say property that do not require parking or not, instead of street sections. And the problem was property. How do we?
Oh, okay. So the change is from the word property to street sections.
Yes,
And both of those are changes in second reading,
correct.
or proposed changes in second reading.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for David or motion item to proceed? Councilmember Boyette.
Well, you listened to the developers or the builders that were here. I wish they would have showed up at the first reading, which we usually do, but give us your 2 cents on what they said and what you think, or can you comment on that?
I'm going to just pass on that opportunity.
Okay.
Okay, were you done, Councilmember Boyette? Councilmember Rowan.
Well, my thought was, how much trouble is it to go back and look at the lighting because of what we heard today?
As was, well, let me back up a little bit farther. In your staff report, there's a portion that's got stakeholders. And it goes through different meetings that we've had since, I don't know, May, I believe. May. And part of what has been described to the planning board at that time was that any proposed change from staff, you have the option to either approve that change or remove that change. And so, rather than, I think the council needs to decide whether they want to approve that change or remove that change, and in which case we would have a third reading.
Okay, Councilmember Bowen.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion just for purposes of discussion, and then I'm happy to give Councilmember Boyette my 2 cents for whatever it's worth. I move to approve second final reading ordinance amending sections 23-100 through 23-1100, Billings, Montana Code subdivision regulations to conform to state legislation passed in 2023 and local changes provided by City Council, Planning, Engineering, Parks, and Fire Department staff as recommended by the Planning Board and staff, and inclusive of the 2 amendments that have presented tonight.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Joy. Councilmember Owen, Joy, do you want to speak to your motion?
I do, thank you, Mayor. I would like to just put a couple things on record in response to some of the public comment that was heard tonight. I think some of the debate mischaracterized the choice that's in front of us tonight with respect to lighting. It is not a cost versus no cost. It is a what kind of cost. Because the absolute certainty that we know is if the community continues to feel unsafe, this council will invest in public safety resources. And quite often, those tax dollars that we spend, which residents cannot opt out of, other than voting it down. But when we impose property taxes increase for more fire, when the county commission proposes property tax increases for more jail spaces, those things are very expensive dollars. These are earlier stages investment that try to use the built environment as one tool in the toolbox to improve the overall safety in our community. Municipalities across the country have adopted this strategy. Arizona has leaned in heavily. The police department there advocates for lighting as a part of the crime prevention strategy. The Wisconsin Crime Prevention Association has endorsed lighting as a critical crime prevention strategy. So this is not unheard of. This is not unusual. This is a common tool in the toolbox because we know that we have to be comprehensive in how we incorporate safety into our community. We heard a little bit tonight about sky and stars and all those sorts of things. I think, again, that mischaracterizes the conversation. There are absolutely dark sky compliant lighting options. This is 100% a solvable question by technology. And just for the record, since the Dark Sky Association was brought up, the Dark Sky Association says outdoor lighting ordinances or codes are great for ensuring that municipalities implement good, safe lighting. A well-written ordinance with proper lighting installed will save the public money and increase safety. The Chicago chapter, a community no stranger to crime battles, the Chicago chapter of the Dark Sky Association has said lighting is a crucial factor in crime prevention and notes that it's often people get it wrong by not thinking about how we prevent light pollution. But then they further note that light intensity and uniformity can psychologically alter the feel of a space. Septet increases natural surveillance by creating an environment that is inviting and appealing to users while making it difficult for abnormal users. Low-level lighting has a positive implication for community mental health and quality of life. This emphasizes that safety extends beyond the prevention of criminal activities to encompass the overall well-being of residents. In fact, the Dark Sky Association believes so strongly in this as they put out guides to communities to help them incorporate lighting while still protecting night sky. So to suggest that this is incompatible with preserving our way of life or enjoying the outdoor space, untrue. I think we also need to acknowledge, as we saw tonight, building is going out further. It is extending further into the community. So that is longer police response times. It means we need more tools in our toolbox to appropriately tackle crime. I believe in the builders in our community. I believe that they can incorporate this wisely, that they can incorporate this at minimal cost. I think the regulation that's here tonight gives them lots of freedom. They have freedom to design light fixtures that meet resident needs, that meet market demand, and bring public safety. And I mean, who knows? Maybe we'll see a bunch of residential areas with bollards and lights on top of them because they're leaning so hard into crime prevention. But I know our development community can solve this together. I would also note, and we've heard here from council members before, that there are other ways to reduce costs because the issues that builders brought up tonight long predated what is going on with this lighting ordinance. If we as council members can be serious about our effort, and I think we can be, serious about our effort to expedite building permits, that will save the typical developer on average $4,500 per month for every month that we can expedite the process. So there are much more effective ways to take a wide swath at improving housing costs, at reducing regulatory burden than saying, well, we just have to let crime prevail in this community. I think we have received pushback on efforts to use fencing as a part of a target hardening environment. We have received pushback on lighting. What I want to see are some solutions. So if folks have solutions on how we can use the built environment as one strategy in the public safety toolbox, I would ask them to bring it. But simply suggesting that we just hope and pray that this works out is not a strategy that works for the community anymore. I think here, the cost justifies the burden, because the alternative is costs that are property tax increases, which is the same homeowner having to pay that taxes. So I continue to believe strongly that this is the way to go, but would invite ongoing discussion. I hope this passes tonight, and would invite ongoing discussion about how we can modify this and make it as reasonable as possible. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councilor Joy, you had the second. Did you want to speak to the motion?
Yes, Mayor. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Absolutely. And Councilmember Owen presented a very, very good case for why this is, and actually some of the same ideas I had. But I wanted to talk about choice, because the idea of choice was brought up over and over and over. Well, some people just want to choose to live without streetlights. And I want to talk about an incident that happened to a constituent. Her house was broken into. She felt her privacy, her space, her safety invaded. And she had a reaction to it that was very, very driven by anxiety, fear, all kinds of problems like that. Every time she stepped into the house, she felt those feelings. And her husband called me and said, "You have got to fix public safety in this community." And that was before we had passed our first public safety mill levy. And I told him, I assure you, I will be working very hard so that we address safety. He said, my wife doesn't want to live in our house anymore, but where do we move to? The suggestion has been made that you have a choice. If you have been a victim of a crime, and you're reacting with something like a trauma response to that, somehow you can just pull up stakes and find that street that's got that perfect light where she can feel safe. That's not a choice. The cost of a therapist is $250 an hour. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion. Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Mayor. It was, this ordinance was well spoken for, mainly for Section 14 for lighting, which I firmly believe that SEPTED is a really strong policy that individuals, businesses should look at to implement in their own homes or businesses. But I think when the city steps in and writes an ordinance that now starts telling people how to build things and start commanding what they can and can't do on their personal property like this, I think we've crossed the line. And so I won't support this, the motion. I think the streetlights section should be removed. So Mayor, I'm going to make a motion to amend the motion to remove Section 14 streetlights.
Councilmember Neese, can I just ask you to clarify, Section 14 that has the mandatory streetlight language begins with the sentence, streetlights shall be installed within residential subdivisions. So that's the mandatory language.
That's correct. Page 54 of the red line version.
Okay. My question is whether you really want to delete all of 14, which goes to how, if streetlights were installed voluntarily, they have to meet certain standards versus only the mandatory requirement. I just need your clarification on that.
Yes, that's a good point. I guess I'll make the amendment to say streetlights may be installed with residential subdivisions.
Okay, to replace the word shall with may.
May.
Is
and
the
then,
proposed amendment.
And if they are going to bring a lighting plan with their subdivision, they can bring one of these options here to the planning board to approve.
Okay.
If there's a second, I'll.
Very good. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Kennedy. Okay, did you want to speak to your proposed amendment?
Yeah, I think the developer spoke here tonight. I think this developer spoke throughout the whole process. We heard and saw emails that they were concerned about this mandatory requirement to have streetlights. And it appears to me the staff put it in here, and it sounds to me like the staff said, well, we're going to put it in here and see what council does. and council seems to be wanting to adopt it. And I think the community doesn't, the building community doesn't want it. It doesn't mean that it won't happen. We've heard tonight that several subdivisions have been built with streetlights. But I think the fact that we're building more and more costly regulations into it, I've known several builders now who have told me they are not building in Billings anymore. They're going to Laurel. They say that the process is easier, they can build them cheaper there, and we're going to start losing the ability to find housing built in here when we start adding more and more regulations. I think further, I think we have to consider what the state legislature just did. They just revamped all these subdivision laws because the city burdens were too heavy. They wanted to simplify them, make them easier. And here we are adding more burdens on top of them trying to streamline the burden. It's not going to be very long before some of these state legislators, which are here tonight running for election, are going to bring more challenges against the cities, taking away more ability for the cities to really to do what we think we should do as best in our community. So I think that section needs to remain there as it may. If there's a later date, you want to consider recommended policy of how things can be done. But I live in a dark street, and I love it. I don't like the idea of having streetlights. I also am very familiar with Chicago. There is you could turn off all your lights, and it's light as can be. So there's any study talking about Chicago, if there's no lights, it must be in a dark alley, and that's what they're probably talking about. And that means downtown, yeah, we should probably have street lights in the alleys downtown. We've talked about that, and we think we do a good job. So when it gets to the higher density, there probably does need to be some street light, some kind of lighting there to prevent that in the high density. But when you get to the rural residential, we should not dictate how those residents or those developers should build their developments. Thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Kennedy, did you want to speak to the motion? It was your second? No. Okay. Discussion now on the proposed amendment, which, as you heard, just to change the word shall to may. I'll address it. I will vote in favor of this. We basically tried this on before and it failed, but I just do want to make clear that lighting works. Ironically, the first time we had this discussion, I was driving home late at night, unfortunately, on Rimrock, and a deer jumped in front of me, but it was under a street light. And I swerved, and I just missed that, I think because it was a street light. Street lights do impact safety, not just in crime, but also in road safety. I want to push back a little bit on some of the statistics about the cost of regulations in residential. Of course, the regulations, but what you never hear in those big numbers about costs is any recommendations about what they should get rid of. Regulations are what require roads. Regulations will require paved roads. Regulations will require sidewalks. Regulations will require roofs. Regulations require walls. So it's easy to throw out those numbers, but until you actually start talking specifics, it doesn't mean much. I also don't agree with the HBA numbers that the cost of adding streetlights are like $9,000 in energy plus a $3,700. I think those numbers are significantly too high. I'd hate to get those in the population, people using those numbers without better calculations. My numbers are, it's probably closer to about $4,500 to $7,000 a house. But that's real money, and this is why I will support it. The timing is bad. I don't think we have the backup. It's a one-size-fits-all proposal for all new subdivisions. I don't know quite how to parse it more specifically, but Montana was just awarded the dubious distinction of having the largest affordability gap for housing in the country, because when you measure cost of housing versus our per capita income, that's us. We're at the top of that list. So I just hate to add to that problem unless we're really, really sure and we don't have a more refined proposal or something. So I am in favor of the amendment. Despite all that other stuff I said. Any other discussion on the motion or on the amendment before we proceed to a vote on the amendment? Okay, so we'll vote on the amendment, again, to change the shall to may. If in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. Voting in favor, Councilmembers Neese, Cole, Kennedy, and Boyette, and Tidswell. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If voting in opposition, please raise your hand. Voting in opposition, Councilmembers Gulick, Owen, Joy, Aspenleiter, and Ripsis, and Shaw, so the amendment fails 5-6. And now we'll proceed back to the underlying motion, which is approval of the whole package of subdivision regs. Further discussion on the underlying motion? Any further discussion on the underlying motion? Okay, we'll proceed to a vote on the original motion then. If in favor of the original motion, please please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Voting in opposition, Councilmembers Neese, Councilmember Kennedy. So the motion passes. Subdivision regs are approved as drafted. That concludes item number 5 and brings us.
Sorry, Mayor?
Councilmember Ipsis.
As drafted with the two.
Thank you for that clarification. That's right. Consistent with the recommendation or the motion by Councilmember Rowan. Would you please read item number 6, Denise? And yeah, please read item number 6.
City Administrator's Annual Performance Evaluation Compensation Consideration.
Yeah, so just a reminder, there is no new agreement on before us here. As Chris earlier clarified, the recommended motion is really incorrect because the contract is not up for approval. The contract already exists. And so if it were to make a change, that would be in order. Bottom line is there is no need for action on the motion per se. But council, we do need some direction on salary, if there's going to be any change in salary. Is there any further direction, I guess? If there's no change from salary, it would just continue at the current level. Councilmember Aspenweider.
Mr. Mayor, I guess I thought after we came out of the executive session, you had a very clear narrative that you were going to give to the public, and I guess if you want one of us to give it, we can do that, but I understood that you were going to do that.
I am prepared to do that. I just wanted to, I guess, set the situation where we're at. So thank you for the permission to do that, I guess. So again, because the contract is just in place, in discussion in the executive session for the benefit of the public, there was concern that making even a cost of living, any upward adjustment in the contract for Chris's contract in the middle of our audit and current efforts to resolve the problem over water bills, that might send the wrong message, and that there was a majority of the council in the executive session that wanted to see the results of the audit. And we're still in that process. It'll be some months. We don't know exactly when. So the discussion was to basically adjourn or not take any action on salary at this point, but also to not let it linger forever. And the discussion was, and I don't know if this would require any formal action, but that we come back to this issue no later than 60 days after the completion of the audit process on the utility bills, or 6 months, whichever is sooner, just so that there's some sort of endpoint to come back to the issue of Chris's compensation. So I guess if we take no action, that was what we will proceed with, and that no action is required. That seemed to be the consensus, but I don't want to cut off council discussion on this, but that's my understanding of where we're at on that issue. Are we prepared to just call 6 done, or is there any discussion? Councilmember Gillick and Councilmember Joy?
Do we speak to the annual performance evaluation as well? Is there any comments on the evaluation, the performance evaluation?
Yeah, I apologize. I went straight to salary and not to the evaluation. Thank you for that clarification. The council did fill out a very extensive written evaluation that includes scoring and also required or allowed for narrative description that we got back from 8 of our 11 council members. We also asked for input from department heads, and we had 8 department heads provide that analysis as well. And I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but the bottom line, the cumulative scores were very good. There was a scale of sort of unsatisfactory, fair, good, very good, and excellent. And the majority of council gave Chris a strong, very good evaluation. That's not to say that council didn't have some frank recommendations for improvements, both in his performance, but in operation of the council or of the city government generally that we want Chris to pursue. Chris was party of these discussions. It was very frank and helpful and open conversations, so I think that was productive. But generally, we appreciate Chris's collaborative nature, his professionalism, his integrity, and his hard work. And we don't want that to get lost in the messaging here. So did I cover that adequately? Okay. All right, very good. We will move on to public comment on non-agenda items if there's nothing further at item 6. Okay, seeing nothing further, item 6, then this is an opportunity for public comment on things not on our agenda. Is there any public comment on non-agenda items? Okay, is there any council initiatives? Thank you. We are adjourned. Appreciate everybody's hard work.